Hey, what's going on? This is the OG Kickoff. Subscribe to the OG Kickoff on YouTube. I'm Conor O'Gara. Will, everyone is ranking quarterbacks right now. So we're going to lean into some peer pressure. I think it's never really a good thing to just let peer pressure dictate decisions. But when it comes to ranking season, I say just go with it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, in my opinion.
That's the thing about content season, man. It really just is. It's like it goes in waves and it's kind of like a fire, right? Like you could see someone start to ask one question and then you look back a week later. It's like, how did we get here? Now we're talking about unicorns versus leprechauns. It's like, oh, yeah, it started with this Notre Dame greatest QB graphic this guy made for On 3 the other day. And we've just all been talking about it since then.
For what it's worth, Brady Quinn probably holds the title. Joe Montana, used in a different sort of way. Joe Theismann, probably getting there before CJ Carr, but you never know. Maybe we'll be discussing CJ Carr with what we're doing today. That is a nice little tease because we are doing something that we haven't done in a little bit. Well, we have a great pod today. Cole Cubelic coming up, by the way. We're going to cover a ton of ground on the SEC, a lot of Auburn stuff as well that we get to with him. And we're going to have Lad of the Week, and we have It Might Mean Too Much that I want to read for the people. But we are drafting quarterbacks today. That is the goal. We are drafting college football quarterbacks for 2026. And we did this draft premise, the first Thursday of every month during the offseason last year. And this offseason, we're going to do them the first Tuesday of every month. So I figured this would be a good place to start. And when I say I figure, you figure because you're the one that's like, we should, instead of just ranking quarterbacks, we should just draft them. That's a better way to probably do this in a way that Danny Cannell and Tom Fornelli and anybody else that put forth these quarterback rankings probably should have done, because maybe it would have been a more consensus thought instead of seeing these individual rankings that made me want to pull my hair out.
Right. And you see it's like the tired versus wired. It's like ranking quarterbacks, anyone can do it. You have lots of time. Drafting quarterbacks live, I have so many more opportunities to fall flat on my face. I could forget guys. I could name some guys that have already been drafted. I could name some guys that are academically ineligible. So really, it's a powder keg of fun things and fun outcomes versus just a whack list, man,
Buddy, if you're academically ineligible in early March, you've never shown up for class.
Shout out Ben Simmons.
Nearly impossible. So last year, we actually didn't do a quarterback draft, a straight up quarterback draft. We did a non-quarterback Heisman draft. We also did a drafting SEC players to be first rounders in 2026. Will, do you want a quick recap of that?
Oh boy. Yes, yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. So we, I think it was probably around April. Yeah. Like April or May of last year when all the way too early mocks came out. We each took 5 players that we thought from the SEC that would be drafted in the first round in 2026. You had Arch Manning, Caden Proctor, Centarian Perkins, Nick Anderson, Parker Brailsford. So only 2 of those guys declared, meaning at most you'll have 2. Maybe you'll.
I told y'all, man. There's ways. Guys, I'm surprised someone wasn't a minister like Glenn Coffey based on me drafting them.
Someone has dropped out to devote their life to God. And you know what? I don't think that means you're losing. I think that you saw bigger things for them, that they just got there in a different way. I think that's okay. I had
really quick. The funniest thing about that is Caden Proctor still being there. I remember vividly being like, I don't think this guy's any good, but I think he's going to get reached on. And that being my shining guy that could still be there is so funny because it felt so recession proof, even though I didn't really believe in it.
And now Caden Proctor, looking at it, is probably late first round project. Really good team will take him and say, let's stick him at right tackle, or let's stick him in the inside and just see if he turns into what we hope he could be. And maybe he's considered that type of risk. But yeah, I think we were in agreement at that time. So I had Garrett Nussmeier, Anthony Hill Jr., Keldrick Falk, LT Overton, and Jermod McCoy. I feel good about Falk and McCoy. Probably those 3 others are day 2 guys, rounds 2 and 3. If I had to guess, I think I'm going to win. I feel all right about that, but today's different. And
well, I mean, the tiebreaker should be guys going to the NFL and not being, turnip farmers like the guys I draft. So I think that probably works out because all those are NFL players to some degree, right?
To be fair, in your defense, you still have SEC players. I mean, Arch Manning still very much in the SEC. He is, spoiler alert, going to be drafted in this draft that we're going to do today. Centurion Perkins, who is a huge preseason piece for an Ole Miss team that was 20 seconds from a national championship. Nick Anderson is at Kentucky. So nobody's turned to farming just yet. So I think maybe long game, that's what you should have been looking for. You could still win the overall guys who end up in the first round. Just it might take more time.
Hey, I'm like Dabo, man. We're winning the game of life out here. Okay, got some great young men out there. Maybe it's not just football. They're great student athletes. What about their degrees, Connor?
You're like Dabo, so you hired Chad Morris?
No, never mind. That's where the comps start.
Exactly. Anyway, this is different today. This is a little bit different. We're drafting quarterbacks for the 2026 season, and that means surroundings matter for this. That's important. We are trying to say that at season's end, these quarterbacks were the best. And sometimes you're the best because you got a really good play caller, or sometimes you're the best because you only have to throw the football 20 times per game and you get to throw the ball in a lot of key spots and everybody thinks you're going to run. Sometimes you're the best because you have really good receivers to be able to throw the ball to. So I thought that's kind of a subjective thing. So let's come up with a pretty simple point system. Usually our point systems are a little bit more complex for what we do, but I thought, you know what, let's just try and keep this pretty straightforward here. And I think usually with quarterbacks, these types of things always play out. And there's usually a place that you get to where you can say, all right, this is more quantifiable than, trying to figure out if this running back from this conference was good. And, there are just a lot of other things that are probably at play. So 1 point for all conference, 2 points for a top 10 Heisman finish, 3 points for a Heisman invite, 4 points for a Heisman win. And you accrue all the points. So Fernando Mendoza would have gotten all 10 points there. Does that make like someone like Gunnar Stockton would have gotten 3 points because he would have had 1 for all conference and 2 for top 10 Heisman finish. And we won't know the points, obviously, until the end of this season. So we're not just saying like, oh, if you've gotten all conference before, you get 1 point. That's not the way we're doing this. We're trying to say who are going to be the best quarterbacks for 2026. And that way we're just strictly rewarding that. We're not looking at where a guy's picked in the NFL draft. And I realize it's going to be hard to kind of separate some of that conversation because so much of this is dominated by that. And soon enough, with these way too early mocks, it will be. But I figured that'd probably be a better way to do that. Are you on board for all of those points? Is there anything else that you'd like to add to that?
No, I think that's all good. I think it's a little bit Heisman heavy, but I mean, if you're individually evaluating quarterbacks, that is a little bit. It's about as one-to-one as you can get, right? Because even like a passing yards type thing, like it's like, oh, we could do guys that led in every stat or whatever. But even some of that stuff is misleading because they can get to, we talked about Snoop Conner the other day and just vulturing goal line touches. It's like, nobody thought Snoop Conner was like a top 5 or top 3 running back because of that. So yeah, it almost feels less logical to go statistical based on that. So yeah, I think even though it could be a little bit Heisman heavy, I think that's about the best way to do it.
And then how do you separate passing yards and passing touchdowns in the American versus in the Big Ten or something like that, where it's all right, you're not going to be sitting there chucking it 40 times per game in November. Like you're just not going to do something like that. So this is probably maybe a little bit more of a straight line way to do this. We have busted out the Iowa notepad again, Will. I have it right here. I'm going to show the people, YouTube audience. We've brought it back out of retirement. I discovered, I think, 3 more Iowa notepads when I was cleaning out my desk here.
Oh, no, they're reproducing. This isn't good.
It's like Christmas morning. They had triplets. It's unbelievable. More than a decade ago, they sent me these things. And they sent them to like everybody in the Football Writers Association of America. And so everybody that pulls out an Iowa notepad knows exactly where you got it from. This is not just special. It wasn't like Iowa said, let's hook you up. I think I've got CJ Beathard on some of these. I've got like Akram Wadley. Just gems. I think I got Kittle.
Akram Wadley, love that.
Yeah, good dude. I remember talking to him like way back in the day. I liked me some Akram Wadley. Okay, so the age-old question, Will, and I always defer to you on this. Do you want first pick or second 2?
Second 2 all day on this one.
I was afraid you were going to say that. All right. I have first pick. You should already know where I'm going. I'm going Trinidad Chambliss. I am. And you know what? I'm a man of my word. I said it last week. I'm saying it again. He is my number 1 quarterback returning in college football. I don't care that he lost his play caller. I do care a little bit. I don't care as much as others do. I already did this rant, so I won't repeat myself too much, but this guy finished 8th in the Heisman voting without spring football. That is hard to do. You know how I talk about that, about the post-spring transfers. Always set your expectations low, especially when it's a guy that wasn't even getting reps with the first teamers. And that Heisman finish didn't even take into account what he did in the college football playoff, wherein he was the second best quarterback in the field outside of Fernando Mendoza. And you can tell me, look, Lane Kiffin's gone and this is all going to fall apart, whatever. I saw examples of that guy doing great things without Lane Kiffin already. I saw him doing great things even with Kewan Lacey not fully healthy in that semifinal game against a loaded Miami defense. He still balled out, and he still did all of those things in the playoff against defensive minds like John Summerall and Kirby Smart and Corey Heatherman and guys that are really respected in this industry. You can tell me that Ole Miss had a cake regular season schedule, and I'll tell you that Ole Miss had 6 games against teams who finished ranked in the AP Top 25. Nobody had more than that. In those games, he had 353 passing yards. Let me take that back. He had 353 more passing yards than anybody in America. When the bullets are flying, I want Trinidad Chambliss. It's as simple as that. Doesn't take sacks, doesn't just scramble. He extends plays. He makes clutch plays. You can take this receiver out, that receiver out. Doesn't matter. He is the ultimate don't count him out guy in a given play, in a given game, whatever. Such a high floor, too. How many times did you watch Ole Miss this year, Will, and think, oh, Trinidad Chambliss blew that game for him? Or, man, he's really costing them these opportunities. I can't think of a single time in which that crossed my mind.
Yeah, no, same. I think that's what you start to, when you have these guys that are like the Cinderella stories, when you try to turn them into a pumpkin, you put pressure in their face, their eyes start getting big. It's almost like with Trinidad, it was the exact opposite. It was like guys were trying to do that to him and thinking like, okay, Mr. D2 Fair State, like, let's see. And it was like in those moments, he became the best version of himself. And so, yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, I mean, I think the defense was probably the reason why they struggled in most of the games. But I would say, or they lost, 2 games total. But that being said, like, I don't think Ole Miss had a cakewalk schedule at all. And I think the easiest way to define that is, both of their playoff wins were rematches, right? Like, they say what you will about Tulane. They played them in the regular season. They were a postseason team. And Georgia, they lost the first matchup. They won the second matchup. And so, yeah, I mean, I think they had, as good of a schedule. Could you say Tulane is a quote unquote marquee out of conference matchup? Hey, I mean, they were better than Texas last year for Ohio State. They made the postseason. So I think like Ole Miss actually had a pretty difficult schedule. And Georgia being the class of the SEC, maybe Alabama didn't age as well going forward. That was kind of the only team that they kind of avoided. So, yeah, I think it gets great competition as well.
The only thing I'm kind of worried about a little bit with him is, you talk about the fact that he played like this guy who his eyes never got too big. And it almost felt like he was playing with house money. Is he now going to be a guy that understands everything that's on the table for him, and it shows? Because he played with such joy and it was carefree without being reckless. That is a hard line to walk as a quarterback, especially in this conference. And I thought he did so at such a high level. So, yes, there's a little bit of concern about that. There's a little bit of concern about all the turnover at receiver. And again, John David Baker, you can't assume that he's going to be as good as Charlie Weiss Jr., but I feel good about getting Trinidad at 1. How high would you have taken him?
I honestly wouldn't have taken him in this first round of 2. I probably would have taken him 4th.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
But you know what? I totally get it, right? And then the question becomes, okay, going from the guy that was, again, kind of the cute story, the guy that was, okay, are you going to start? If our guy Austin Simmons gets healthy, okay, he could do some nice stuff, but to go wire to wire in the SEC. And we just saw this with Arch Manning, where you got a bullseye on the back of you from, preseason. Teams are cracking jokes about you, talking about, okay, we're going to play you week 1 if you're Ohio State or whatever, and saying, we have to stop this guy. You're at the top of the scouting report, right? And you can say Lacey's a little bit of that, but I think they're kind of the 1-2 punch, right? Talked about no Caden Lee, so I think that would be my only question for him is how many guys have we seen really walk into the expectation of that, of being kind of the top dog and really delivering. But that being said, I think that this is a take that isn't unilaterally shared, right? I think a lot of people would say Arch Manning is the number 1 quarterback. It'd be really fascinating to see where Trinidad shakes up in the preseason list. So, yeah, I think that's the only question is, can he do it again? And can he do it kind of with a different change of scenery?
I'll tell you what, he's going to shake up better than 10 where Danny Cannell had him. That's the single most egregious thing I've ever seen him do. And I've seen Danny do a lot. And I like Danny. Nah, miss me with that. Your turn.
Yes. Well, this is actually pretty interesting because I thought Arch was going to be gone here.
You thought I was going to go back on what I said last week and take Arch 1?
Yeah, but if I gave you the number 1 pick, right, I thought it'd be a background. So you know what? I'll go ahead and stick with who I had here originally. I'm gonna go ahead Dante Moore.
Okay.
So Dante Moore, I think, is kind of in a unique position where didn't finish the year super well, right? It wasn't like he was riding off this like big high. So I think people are, expecting a little bit more from him without him being like the golden boy. I think that it was a situation where I think people are going to be kind of in his corner. So when it comes to, again, we're doing our Heisman conversation narratives, right? I think that the level of competition he's going to play, level of athletes around him, level of success that Oregon has proven to have over and over again. I know Will Stein is gone, kind of related there. But just with what Oregon brings in the regular season, which is what this is fundamentally about. It's not, do you get to the postseason and get punched in the mouth? Oregon wins the get to the postseason to get punched in the mouth award every year. But that's not the award we're giving out today. We're giving out the, regular season Heisman best quarterbacks at the end of the year, right? But kind of before that era. So I think with Moore, there's, like I said, a lot to like. We talked about how he was so smooth, and having that extra season to kind of gel with those athletes, I think is going to be really big. And they're going to be obviously at the top, one of those bigger dogs with Ohio State and Indiana. So weird to say, right? Drink it in. I guess third place behind Ohio State and Indiana, just like we thought. But yeah, I think that with, the way that Julian Sayin kind of presented himself, I think that and Mendoza leaving, I think that he is the heir apparent in the Big Ten, and it's his spot until something goes wrong.
He was second on my board. I love Dante Moore. I think the performances he had to end their playoff run, and I say performances because there are a lot of instances in which if Oregon's defense hadn't shown up with its hair on fire, acting like James Madison just embarrassed them and pulled down their pants in front of their entire school in the second half of that game, they probably don't play like that against Texas Tech, and that's not always a winning performance on that stage. I think the last 2 games that he played were the reason that he came back to school. And there is a possibility that he doesn't progress in the way that he has throughout his career. But I'm willing to take that chance on someone that has shown the things that we've seen from him. I said a lot during the playoff. I think Dante Moore is just big time. Like, we know that he can light up a team with inferior talent like James Madison or Rutgers, but I thought where he really grew up and took that next step was the key moments late on the road, late at Penn State, late at Iowa, late at Washington. That instance where it's 3rd and 9 and he's got to step up from backside pressure. I rewatched this play because I remember thinking at the time, that's come back. You're going to come back to that one at some point, and that's going to be a sign of like this guy's getting it. And it was a play where he had to sense that backside pressure. He has to step up. You have to find the soft spot in the zone, kind of layer this throw, and make sure that Malik Benson can go up and make a play. You overthrow it, it's probably a pick. You underthrow it, it's a batted ball, and you're probably giving back the ball to Washington, and who knows what can happen after that. He did stuff like that last year. And he was really solid against pressure after he was not early in his career at UCLA when he was a true freshman. 82.8 was the adjusted completion percentage when kept clean. And he is by no means a check down Charlie. And I know I saw like the throw chart for the college football playoff, or I can't remember what it was. I think it was against like the 4 best defenses that he faced. And you look at the spray chart and it's kind of check down Charlie. I get that. He also led FBS with 15 touchdown passes on throws that traveled at least 20 yards. And he was second in those spots in adjusted completion percentage. So he can make those throws. It's just, what do you have to do? Will there be that adjustment in a post-Will Stein world? Possibly. The decision-making can improve, definitely, but he's gonna still come back with a lot of weapons. And I get that Kenyon Sadiq is a unique weapon. They're going to be losing him. They also get Evan Stewart back after he was just unavailable last year. You get Corian Moore back as well. I love Dante Moore. I would have had no problem with him going 1 overall as well.
Absolutely. So now I'm going to fall into the trap that I always fall into with these drafts, where you do something that isn't exactly what I plan, which is, do I go with my original plan or do I change it? I'm going to go with my original plan, okay. Connor. Darian Mensah.
Wow. That is okay. I did not think that we would be getting a Darian, but I'm interested because the criteria of this draft of who is going to look best in 2026 is different than simply who do you feel like you would take in a schoolyard draft. There's some of that, but I think Mensah is that's probably the reason you're taking him this high, right?
Yes, and I mean, that's the thing. Okay, this is not the same old Miami. This is not the Miami that, would choke in the postseason and all that stuff. They have proven they can build a physical roster. Connor, you know who led the ACC in passing yards last year?
Darian Mensah did, and he was
Darian Mensah. And yet,
quarterback of an ACC championship team. Yeah.
yep, and that's exactly where I was going there. Hey, Miami may have not won the ACC ever. Oh, well, you're picking Miami to win the ACC. You're falling for the rat poison. Darren Mintz already won the ACC
Yeah.
at Duke. He already led the conference in passing yardage at Duke. If his name was not Darian Mintz and he did not play at Duke, I don't know how he didn't get first team All ACC last year. That's kind of shocking to me. But that being said, I think that if you just take that player, surround him with that talent, and say, "All right, son, we fought tooth and nail to get you here. Your spot's going to be safe." This guy's going to have the lowest level of competition, maybe of anyone, in terms of the guys that we see, and he has probably the highest level of production we've seen. So once I looked at the criteria here of it, this feels pretty easy. Miami is now getting a positive bump from the media. They're now getting a positive, like being associated with the UM now after very nearly winning a natty is very different than being, these guys that we've seen every single year that tend to fall flat. So I love the move for them. I love the move for him. And I think this is an easy one that's going to kind of fly under the radar, set it and forget it. You look back and go, duh, he's first team ACC. Duh, he's in the Heisman conversation.
Go ask Carson Beck what it's like to throw passes to Malachi Tony and hand the ball off to a healthy or just somewhat healthy Mark Fletcher Jr. Seems pretty sick.
Seems pretty dope. Yeah, seems way better than Duke. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I would sign up for that. I don't think a lot of people will be rooting for Darian Mensah, given the way that Miami very obviously tampered to be able to get him. And poor Manny Diaz, friend of the show, that had to suck. Like that had to really, really suck. The only reason I did not have him higher, he will be in great spots. We also saw last year Shannon Dawson, once he figured out that Carson Beck was still very turnover prone, they totally changed their offense. And the way that they stretched the field was different. There is a possibility that Shannon Dawson, with a turnover prone quarterback, can do those things. Now, Darian Mensah, you're going to look at the number and you're going to say 6 interceptions. That's not turnover prone. He had 21 turnover worthy plays last year, which is putting the ball in harm's way. It is, I think he would tell you that's something that he would like to be able to improve on. So that's the only thing that I'm wondering about is like, are they going to try and turn him into a game manager, even though they spent all that money? They turned Carson Beck into kind of a game manager, even though they gave him all that money as well. But a great player. And if you're getting someone that's got that type of experience, who's, kind of risen the ranks, look, I'm not here to tell you that he can't be a Heisman Trophy finalist or do really good things this year.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's like, well, if he were turnover prone, like Carson Beck was turnover prone. It was, can we take a guy who was a blue chip recruit, played at Georgia, played in these big games, and cut down the turnovers? With Darian Mensah, I mean, his biggest crime is playing for Duke. Literally, like, what has he kind of done wrong in his career? I mean, maybe he's had some bad games here or there in bigger spots, but that being said, like, I think the thought of him getting in his own head or being kind of the, I hate to say a bad teammate, but the vibe of Carson Beck leaving Georgia, where it was a total reclamation process. The only reason why we're here with Darian Mensah is because of weird NIL rules. Like, people don't like Miami, but Darian Mensah loves Miami. There's not anything weird going on between those two sides. It's just those sides in the NCAA, which, hey, like, you've heard my take. Stop being cowards and write your contracts down and get a players union if you want people to do stuff like this. So yeah.
I'm going to go to a place that I don't think. All right, here's my debate. Just like you were talking about, I have someone who is higher on my board, but I don't think you're going to take him next. So I'm going to take the guy that I think you're going to take after, because I think I can get him around later. And I'll explain this after the fact. I'm going to take Arch right now. I'm going to take Arch, and I am not one of these people that think he is a finished product. I'm not. I am not one of these people that is going to tell you he will win the Heisman Trophy, and if he doesn't, it's a total disappointment. I am slightly lower than consensus. It kind of amazes me, but also doesn't amaze me to see people already having him at number 1. I think you can be all in on him and still think he has improvement to make in some key areas. The dirty little secret about Arch's game is that he still can't really throw to his left yet. Whether that's because of perhaps the shoulder injury that he dealt with or what, it is an obvious knock on his game that goes beyond the short yardage passes. I went and looked this up because I thought this watching him a few times. Last year, and this is all according to PFF, only 32 of his 248 completions were passes to the left
Oh
of the
my God,
hash.
this is Jalen Brown all over again. Look at this.
Will, you know who that's the same amount as?
Who?
Injured Garrett Nussmeier.
Man, that's
32.
crazy. Yeah,
Same exact number.
that's literally the Celtics thing. We're like, well, if Jalen Brown could dribble, it's like if you could just throw to your left, man, you'd be the best quarterback in America.
Jalen Brown's having a good year. That's got to get better. And I think it will, because I think he should have the game slow down for him a bit. And I think he should be able to improve some of those mechanical issues. It's not a given, but you feel good about that given the surroundings. Here's the good news. That offensive line gets 4 starters back. That offensive line was not good last year. It was a liability. Sark was very unable. Inability. He had an inability, is what I was trying to say. He had an inability to adjust to an offensive line that just did not pull its weight. And it was a new look group and it struggled. They now get 4 returning starters back. They should be better. You had a pair of 1,000-yard power conference backs transfer into your program, and you added Cam Coleman, aka the best SEC contested catch guy, which should help a quarterback that has struggled with some accuracy issues. This will be year 4 for Arch in the Sark offense. Obviously, year 2 as a starter. For all the frustration that his first season endured, the amazing thing is that he still finished with 37 total touchdowns and over 3,500 scrimmage yards. That's good. And yes, the hype was out of control. The hype is still going to be there, albeit with different contexts, because we've actually seen what it looks like for a full season. Never assume health, but this was a guy that took a ton of hits last year. He didn't miss a start. He was a willing runner, and he at least progressed in the latter half of the season. Again, it wasn't a perfect rise, but he still did things outside of that Georgia game that made you think this is a guy who's figuring some things out. He's learning who he is as a college quarterback. 40 touchdowns, 40 touchdowns, 4,000 scrimmage yards, a trip to the playoff, and maybe a trip to New York. I think all those are very realistic things for Arch this year, given how he should better know his strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, and it is criminal that he's going this low. And again, this is why it's not a list; it's a draft. Because I think we both think he's higher than the 4th best quarterback. Like, I think he could be better than anyone who's been taken just on a raw talent projection. But it's just weird. Like, I don't know if we've seen a guy have the level of expectations that he's had at like 18 and then kind of crash out and then kind of come back over the course of a season and then start the next season with all that behind him off of a strong, like it's just such a unique sort of circumstances here. And I mean, I would like to think that at least the media would be rooting for him after seeing him struggle. And if people were kind of rolling their eyes, like he did get humbled to a degree last year, right? Like they missed the playoff and they struggled a little bit. They had the bad loss to Florida. So he's progressed. It's not like he's just cruising along, with this little pit stop in college football. So yeah, I think there's just too many unknowns in the SEC. But I was a lot higher on him kind of in the back end of the year than a lot of people were, just because I saw that he was progressing. And, we could be fair about the Georgia game. We could be fair about the Florida game and still see these moments where it goes, wow, this offense is kind of failing him. Wow, these receivers are not getting open. Wow, this run game kind of sucks. Wow, they're really not bringing any of those guys back. So that being said, like I'm very interested to see the second year of him being the banner carrier for Texas football. Now knowing that it's not going to be this cakewalk and he's going to have to play, almost like that Tebow-esque role where it's like, hey, it is kind of all on me, and that's fine.
Yeah, and it'll be, for his sake, he better hope it's different than 2008 Tebow. But can it be still at a level, or 2007 Tebow? 2008 Tebow would be great. What am I kidding? That was the wrong year. 2007 Tebow was I'm here to do all the heavy lifting, and the defense is probably not going to give me the help that I'm used to getting at Florida. I don't know that it'll be like that, but who knows? I have more questions than answers about the Texas defense. So he could be putting up even bigger numbers as well. I have him as my 3rd best quarterback in the SEC, which sounds weird because I just took him as the 2nd quarterback off the board, and I had him 4th on my overall big board here. So again, there's a little bit of strategy in this, and I'll explain it after what I think will be my next pick. So you can go ahead.
This is going to be really interesting. Brendan Sorsby.
Okay. Figured he'd get taken. Wasn't sure if I would get him late with maybe like my last pick.
Yeah. So same situation as Mensa, a guy that's already been successful in the conference, right? Guy that has already done it. You know, put building around him at Texas Tech with this unlimited pool of oil money, a guy that can be a dual threat, can do whatever they ask. And in their pitch where they beat Lane Kiffin, right? Like they beat LSU to get Sorsby because I feel like that was pretty clearly LSU's number one choice, and they quote unquote ended up with Levitt. Now there was a whole detour through the state of Washington, not worth getting into. But I think what they were able to sell him is, dude, this is going to be the Sorsby show. We're going to let you run it. We're going to let you throw it. We're going to add some vertical elements. We're going to do what you do well. And we're going to get you just this embarrassment of riches. And if you look up and down their schedule, I mean, I'm really struggling to find a game where they're not going to be heavy favorites here. You know, so if you think about what goes into not maybe winning the Heisman, getting the votes, being first team all conference, it feels like he's going to, assuming health, right? Like as long as he stays healthy, feels like he's just going to soar to this because it really was kind of a two-team league last year, and it felt like both of these teams in BYU and Texas Tech were really building something. You know, maybe there are some challengers here and there, but as you kind of look down the schedule, it's teams that, you know, their quarterback got poached or their head coach got fired or poached, or, you know, it's teams that got worse while Texas Tech got better outside the Arizona Wildcats, who are going to be pretty interesting here. But that being said, there's just not any of these weird, you know, out of conference games. Like, hey, going to Buffalo's kind of hard, but or sorry, not Buffalo. Going to the Colorado
You said
Buffaloes.
they going to the Bills or something?
Yeah, they're going to the Colorado Buffaloes. Could be kind of hard, but you know, outside of that, like, there's really not a ton to be scared of this schedule. So a guy that, again, set it and forget it. I'm not going to be gritting my teeth, hoping, you know, it's a two-team race at the end. I think that even if they had lost the Big 12 last year, he would have still probably been first team, you know, all Big 12. So yeah, I think that given how well Texas Tech did last year, how they've committed to specifically him and the team overall, this one feels easy.
He was a second team All Big 12, if I'm not mistaken.
Who was first team? I'm gonna look that up.
Noah Fifita was first team.
You're so right.
Yeah, my
Wait
man.
to see what he's gonna come off the board.
He's on the board. I think that there are a lot of people who were surprised how early on they heard about Brendan Sorsby, given the lack of big primetime opportunities that he's had. Maybe you watched that season opening game where they lost to Nebraska playing at Arrowhead, and you didn't really tune into a whole lot of Cincinnati, and you're like, hey, this team, I think, what did they finish, like 7-5 this past year? And like, he had really good moments, and they had a really nice bounce back after that game. But for those that are kind of wondering what's all this hype about, why was this guy so highly regarded in the transfer portal? Guys that are coming off of 36 touchdown seasons at the power conference level, who are dual threat guys at 6'3", 235, only 5 interceptions. Those guys go for a lot of money. They just do. And that is the type of guy who was really going to be able to benefit from a new market. And Cincinnati apparently has some NIL things that they need to be able to figure out. But yeah, he had a big market for a reason. And there's definitely a world in which he goes to Texas Tech. We look up and he's got great surroundings, and kind of much like we just talked about with Darian Mensah, he could be the benefactor of that. The only thing that I wonder about with him, though, is that are we sure yet that that's where quarterbacks go to become elite? Because Baron Morton just didn't have to. And then when he did, it was Oregon and it was too late. So they still are trying to establish what that looks like. I think Joey McGuire's team is still trying to kind of find that identity outside of just we're going to dominate you in the trenches, beat you in a couple of different ways. And they could do that this year. It could be a better group of players for that. But I think that Sorsby is someone that everybody kind of has their eye on. And, I won't fault him for the fact that he left IU.
And I want to clear this up because that was a classic 7-point sentence, like Cajun, let me just say like the bare minimum amount of words. If they repeat their performance last season, even if they don't win the Big 12, he could be first team all Big 12. You're right. He was second team last season because they had Baron Morton, who was not even like, nobody thought he was special. So that's the thing, is that even if he has a duel with Noah Fifita in the Big 12 championship, but it's awesome, given what he has been, what Texas Tech has been, you could still kind of give them the edge just based on how the media votes out there. And again, Fifita did it last year. Like, I'm not taking that away from him, but it's a lot easier to see you drop in a plus quarterback versus just like a mid game manager. And Texas Tech looks more fun. They're living up to the expectations of being, a playoff team versus an Arizona team that's just kind of been stuck in this. I mean, since Noah Fifita got there, he's been awesome, and they've kind of just not been exactly what they need to be. They've been a good team, not taking that away from them, but I really do think that Fifita's point in this, matters because he's one of these quarterbacks. And if he ends up outplaying Sorsby could have very few points. Like that's kind of his nemesis in the Big 12.
Feet led him to 9 wins. First season without Ted McMillan. Just saying, my man. I might have to take Noah Fita. I'm not taking him now. I'm taking the most underrated quarterback in college football based on the early list that I've seen so far, and that's Gunnar Stockton. Gunnar Stockton was 7th in the Heisman voting, had a late season side-by-side with Arch, and you would never know it based on looking at these lists. And I realize that Georgia's defense and Texas's defense is a different sort of matchup. They're playing in Athens. I get it. He does not have the ceiling that Arch does, and he's not going to make NFL people foam at the mouth, drool at the mouth. Foam at the mouth means they're angry. Drool at the mouth means they're excited. Georgia doesn't have a Cam Coleman to throw the ball to like Arch does, but I was so impressed with what Gunnar did year one as a starter. The two biggest questions that we were asking at this time last year were, could he develop that all-important sixth sense for backside pressure, which you really only get when you're playing live football. You don't get that in practice. So you can tell me all the mental reps in the world. You don't get that until you're actually out there when the games matter. And two, could he attack downfield when needed? Among FBS quarterbacks with 100 pressured dropbacks, Gunnar Stockton was second in FBS with a 102.5 NFL quarterback rating, behind only Fernando Mendoza at 102.7. He was easily number one in FBS in those spots with a 79.6 adjusted completion percentage. In other words, when he was pressured, he was good. I know some are going to point out a lot of short passes. If you saw the route tree for Zachariah Branch ahead of the NFL Combine, you're like, oh man, Mike Bobo loves him a wide receiver screen. Breaking news. I get that. But nearly identical average depth of target on pressured dropbacks to guys like Julian Sayin and Trinidad Chambliss, all of whom top 10 in the Heisman voting. Maybe there's something to be said for keeping the ball short when you're getting pressured and not just throwing it up for grabs. And on those deep shots, he was nearly the same on adjusted completion percentage as Arch, who obviously threw those at a much higher rate than Gunnar Stockton did. Different offense, different player. I didn't really think that Georgia had an ideal field stretcher last year, and getting the ball to Zachariah Branch near the line of scrimmage was a really smart play. It was great to see him work in space, and Georgia, when it can get those downfield blocks going with their receivers, really tough team to stop. Branch is gone. The new big transfer addition is Isaiah Canyon from Georgia Tech, who I think is going to be that guy in what's a new look receiver room. They have some holes to be able to fill with Colby Young gone as well. But Canyon had 8 grabs on passes that traveled 20 yards downfield. He did so with the Haynes King version of the Georgia Tech offense, which love Haynes King. That's not what they're out there to do. That's just not what they're going to be able to try and beat you with. So my concerns aren't there. And I loved that in addition to being lights out in the intermediate range, he was the most effective running quarterback of the Kirby Smart era, and especially in the red zone. The list of power conference quarterbacks who had 10 rushing scores and 300 yards after first contact, we love that stat, and 20 missed tackles forced. This is the list. Mark Gronowski from Iowa, Haynes King, Bear Bachmeier, Connor Wigman, Bird Ficklin, which is just an all-time name, the Utah backup, Devon Dampier, Diego Pavia, Gunnar Stockton. Those are the guys. In other words, they were really good. And that is a real weapon to be able to have the quarterback run game. And Gunnar Stockton can take advantage of it in ways that in the first 9 years of the Kirby Smart era, we're not used to seeing quarterbacks do that outside of Justin Fields. I love Gunnar Stockton, and I don't care who knows.
All right. Now, are you worried that you now have all SEC guys?
Yes, I'm terrified. I did not plan for that to be the case. I really did. I think I got to go away from the SEC in my last 2 here. Otherwise, it just looks like straight up pandering.
It's going to be, that's the thing. We can't do a vote on this because it's like, it's going to be like two Texas Tech fans. And you're like, well,
I'll play the long game. You know this. I always play long. You throw the popular vote out. I don't care about the popular vote.
That's very true. You've said like, that's been your thing. You're so right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the interesting thing here, right? Is that like, man, Bobo is just the ultimate Zag guy, right? Like, just the only thing we haven't figured out. Then we have the conversation last year of who's more valuable, Mike Bobo or his son, because they can't snap the ball without it's so true. And so, yeah, I mean, by the end of the year, it felt like okay, they've kind of crossed this precipice. Felt like Gunnar's play really did start to dip off, and like. I know he played decently well against Ole Miss, but like I said, I just don't think that defense was awesome. And I think that the way that Miami forced them to miss the amount of tackles they did, You can kind of look at the Georgia Tech game and look at some of the things in the late season. Was he injured to end the year? Nobody likes to diagnose a phantom injury like me,
Probably.
buddy. So, I mean, but if you look at how he played, I mean, going back to the Texas game, going back to like some of these dominant performances he had where he was selling these play fakes, he was hitting guys in stride. And then
Tennessee.
and the season goes on. It's like, where'd he go? So I don't think he's just is a fraud or crumbled. I think something happened with his health. I think that not having his center mattered. So yeah, I think that he actually weirdly is poised for like a quote unquote breakout year, which I mean Georgia fans have been, barking about that forever. But I think that now that he's not the backup, it's not, Beck's backup is how he was known coming into this year. And it's like, okay, or Kirby, you're not gonna get a portal guy. It's like, no, this guy's awesome. I think now having the table set for him really matters.
I thought that it was a split series against Trinidad. I thought that the second game there was a clear lull that Gunner had, and the plays that Trinidad made down the stretch were just on the money. And that's kind of the way that it went in the first game too. I mean, his lull didn't come until the fourth quarter, and it just so happened that Gunner had 0 incompletions in the second half of that game, and Georgia came back and won a game that they trailed by 2 scores in the fourth quarter. So, yeah, I think seeing him shine in those big time moments, I'm all in, and I'll be higher than consensus and perfectly okay with that.
So, here's one where I'm never going to feel sorry for this team. I just need to know, how do we handle Notre Dame with the conference thing?
It is what it is at this point. Nobody's
Okay.
changing their opinion on it. But take CJ Carr, because CJ Carr is a perfectly fine pick here.
But I'm saying, like, can I get a point somewhere else, or is that just a null and void? He can't win a conference championship.
Good question, Will. Good question, Will. That's part of the risk. That's part of the risk, man. You got to join a conference. Sorry, that's part of it. If you lose by 1 point and CJ Carr is awesome,
he just doesn't have a conference. I'm gonna write Notre Dame a Pinman letter and be like, "You bums!" Like that's the thing. Like I said, I don't feel sorry for him. I think they should join a conference.
All right, I'll give you a courtesy point if you want your courtesy point to be able to tie it up. We'll figure that out. You will not lose this because CJ Carr did not 1 point for all conference.
Okay. Perfect. So I'll go ahead and take CJ Carr. CJ Carr, who has an offensive coordinator who has won a Heisman. Many people are calling CJ Carr the next Jaden Daniels. No, but I think that it does come down to, this is an angry Notre Dame team, and they're a team that plays no one. And at the end of the day, they have created all this media hoopla about opting out of the greatest bowl in the world, the Pop-Tart Bowl, which should be your goal, especially if you're Notre Dame. I think that, they've basically said we're here to win a championship or bust. And then again, they've kind of doubled down on getting out of the rivalries and doing things that make that very easy and basically getting an automatic bid into the CFP. So if we were doing CFP appearances, maybe I'd get that point back. But that being said, I think that Notre Dame does best when everyone's enemy. In fact, that's what Brian Kelly was great at, that Marcus Freeman hasn't figured out yet. You need to be hated at Notre Dame. It gives you a plus 10 stamina buff. All right. So now they've finally done that. They found a way to be hateable under Marcus Freeman. This is not football analysis. CJ Carr had a very good season as a first-time starter that was fighting for his job out of the gate. He had a difficult test where I feel like he played pretty well against A&M to start the year. And I think that with the amount of synergy that Notre Dame has in their coaching staff, they have guys that have built staff for a long time. They have an offensive staff that has stayed together. And when they trust a guy, they really trust him. And you've seen how they've now built up several starters in a row under Freeman. So I think that all Carr has to do is play the same as he did last year, and he'll be in these conversations at the end of the year, just like Jeremiah Love was, who's obviously gone now, right? He's going to be the guy they push forward to the Heisman campaign. So let's say nothing changes and Love just is gone. He's already there, but I think he's going to get better. I think he's a good player, a great player, and I think that again, their coaching staff and their schedule makes it to where he's only going to be in prime time whooping folks.
Which is what he did this past year. He was really good. I was fascinated to see how it's going to play out after they had a rare quarterback battle in the offseason. Steve Angeli transfers to Syracuse. Kenny Minchie stays on as the backup. Now he's off to Kentucky. And I was like, dang, they're really kind of putting all their eggs in this basket. It's because they know that Minchie's going to be gone at season's end unless he takes over for an ineffective Carr. And when you have those premier games from the jump, like you're right, there is pressure on you. I think I might be a little bit too low on him. I had him at 7th on my board, and I'm perfectly okay with him being considered like a top 4 quarterback in the country. Second best offense in America, Will. They averaged 42 points per game last year. Like, it was so unbelievably impressive how quickly they could light up a scoreboard. And I'm not just saying that because they could light up, the Arkansas defense. I mean, they were a team that was ready from the jump offensively in ways that, well, I shouldn't say ready from the jump offensively because they forgot that they had Jeremiah Love on their team. But after that Miami game, they were ready. They were totally ready. They just had to lose one game. They had to lose one game just like the year before, lose to Northern Illinois, and then you figure it out. And then everything is going to be okay. He is a guy that I think you can make the case if he has a clean pocket, he's the best quarterback in the country. He looks that comfortable attacking downfield. And look, for all I know, he's probably going to have a low pressure rate again, and that's going to be something that works in Notre Dame's favor, and they're able to be just fine. He's only pressured on 24% of his dropbacks last year, and that's going to continue to be a strength. You just kind of expect that at this point. The only reason I'm not even higher on him, that sample size when they're lighting up scoreboards and it looks really good offensively. I don't know that he showed you he can be a when the bullets start flying. It was almost like everything came too easy because in part the competition got worse. His 10 games to end the season, they did not face a single top 50 scoring defense. He also had teams that were accounting for the best non-quarterback in the sport, probably at least on the offensive side of the ball, and Jeremiah Love. So you're not really getting like the rushing element from him where all of a sudden he's going to be able to flip that switch. I don't think that's going to be a part of his game necessarily, but man, the more I watch CJ Carr, the more I go, I think he's really capable of doing special things. And if they kind of keep him upright, what's to say that he can't be the guy that you just do not want to face in the college football playoff? And he's that guy that can lead them to a national championship, even with a receiver room that kind of like a couple of the other guys in this group, not exactly a bunch of household names, like go up and get it type of guys. And I think he made that offense a lot better last year.
Yes. And I mean, hey, man, like I couldn't have been more wrong about Mike Denbrock. The way that they are so physical, the way they block, the way they run the ball, it's like it makes me so jealous. Like that used to be LSU, like with Denbrock, and then suddenly they figured out how to do all of that as soon as he left. And so that's exactly it. It's that, hey, you can be a game manager and still look awesome in this offense, but he has the talent to do more. And this schedule, man, is a thing of beauty. This is significantly harder than Sorsby's schedule, but it's laid out. I mean, when you get to set your own schedule, this is the type of canvas you get to do. They go to Lambeau to play Wisconsin, not a good Wisconsin team, but one that, voters know, right? Their first tough game, I mean, man, they're at Bill Belichick. They play Stanford at home. Their first tough game is at Lavelle Edwards Stadium for BYU. It's Saturday, August 17th, right? So kind of like
Saturday, August 17th. Season starting early for them, is it?
No. That's their first like hard game. You know what I'm saying?
August 17th?
Oh, I did say August. You're so right. It's October. Duh.
Yeah, that would make more sense.
Yes. Duh.
Yep.
Okay. So October 17th, right? So about 2/3 of the way through the season, they go to BYU, then they're off. Duh. Right. So like they have an opportunity to win that game, but if not, who cares for Notre Dame? Then, okay, Navy at Gillette, then Miami at home, Boston College at home, SMU at home. This is like a perfect award season. This is like award bait movies. Like when something comes out right in that certain window where it's like this is Oscar bait. Like this schedule is set up to win this man an award. I feel so great taking him right now because it's literally like back to back to back to back, home game, and then I think that all he has to do is basically lose 2 games or less and be good there. And even then, there are clearly teams that you can lose to in there, i.e. Miami. And so, I think that this one, like, they're going to make the playoff come hell or high water, or they're going to, declare a holy war on the CFP.
I think Marcus Freeman eventually has an NFL chapter. I don't think his NFL chapter will be when he is a quarterback returning as good as CJ Carr. That's my stance on all that. After seeing the conversations, the way that some of that played out, and I'm not one of these guys at all, you guys know, who's like, that coach is leaving for the NFL. But sometimes you just kind of have to know what you have returning and know that could be the thing that opens up even more doors for you. And I think CJ Carr could be that guy. So I like that pick. I think it's good value at that spot. I'm going to stay in the state of Indiana. I'm going Josh Hoover.
Here he goes. Oh my God.
Come on, man. You had me an Indiana quarterback. Like, talk about surroundings being good. I hate to use the term system QB because it takes away from what Fernando Mendoza did last year. It even takes away from some of what we saw with Curtis Rourke in year 1 with Kurt Cignetti. Like, I don't want to assume that just because you're entering that system, you're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. But they've handpicked 3 quarterbacks. This is the 3rd year now. And all of them have kind of been similar in background. Now it's a little bit different in what Josh Hoover has done up to this point, what he's done, the type of offense that he's been at TCU, but pretty similar. And you're now going into a situation where instead of, like we talked about Dante Moore, he's got a new offensive coordinator, he's got a new play caller, a lot of these top guys that, they're really good, so they lose their play caller. He keeps his play caller, he keeps his offensive minded head coach, and then they bring Tino Sinceri back from UCLA after he had less than a season there with the whole Nico thing. But you watch these interviews with Cignetti, and the first thing that he'll say about Hoover is that he's extremely accurate. They love these veteran quarterbacks that can master the timing routes. It was such a strength. It was such an unguardable thing that Fernando Mendoza had in his back pocket that they could bust out on third down. And they always go after these guys that have the mental clock. They're decisive. They probably made that decision because they've seen a guy do it for 3 years at the power conference level, and they probably surprised a few by not going with Alberto Mendoza, the younger brother of Fernando, even though he was really good in relief. But it just would have been a little bit more of a roll of the dice, even though it is year 3 in the system. And I think they like a guy that started and has made a variety of throws. And in Hoover, you're going to get someone that's already shown he could do that. I expect that he's going to be on the same page as Charlie Becker, incoming Nick Marsh, who showed a lot of talent at Michigan, who showed a lot of promise at Michigan State. You got an elite 1-2 punch there. And IU lost Surratt and Cooper. I don't know that it'll matter that much, but the big strength on IU's team right now is the offensive line. And that is a great situation to walk into. They're going to be able to do anything they want offensively with knowing that that is going to be the anchor of everything. So I'm saying a lot here because, look, at this point, I don't think you can doubt a quarterback that goes into that offense. I just don't. And I think Hoover is going to be able to get those timing routes. They work a lot of the middle of the field with what he's done at TCU under Kendall Briles. Different sort of situation here, but it kind of sets up what they do on the outside. So I'm very high on him. I don't think it's fair to assume he's going to become Mendoza 2.0, but I think 3 years under Kendall Briles at TCU will really prepare him for the type of offense that IU likes to run.
Yeah, I mean, it was really a coin flip here. I was like, let Connor take his guy. But yeah, I think that again, they don't just go to the store and buy whatever's on sale. Like they, at Indiana, they have a certain type of athlete.
They got Mark Cuban, and Mark Cuban just pays for the entire roster, and it's not even football anymore. So, like, who even cares?
Yeah, I mean, oh no, big bad Indiana is coming for our teams. Oh no, that's so funny to me, man. Anyway, but yeah, like they really don't go out and get whoever a la Lane Kiffin, right? And that, it's buzzy, the Lane Kiffin thing, but how many of those guys, and we've seen it, we talked about it, how, Kiffin got that guy from Oklahoma State who ended up not playing. The quarterback, whose name was Simmons.
Spencer Sanders.
Spencer Sanders. It was the S names. And so, yeah, like, a lot of those guys, like the big, flashy, expensive, like free agent guys, don't really work out. Whereas with the Indiana model, where it goes, hey, we're going to really recruit the mess out of like 5 guys that we know we need and that they know they want us. And it's going to be really like low, like stress. And it's just going to be like pop, 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 and not like we're going to be, making billboards and doing these big pitches.
Quick too. Yeah. Like these guys commit early on in the portal window.
Exactly. And I think that matters so much because you know what you have and you just say, hey, and you recruit other guys based off of it. So, yeah, I think this is a great pickup for them, just like Mendoza. I mean, maybe not just like Mendoza because it's pretty hard to be just like Mendoza. 80% of Mendoza. This is the only situation so far where we're like projecting worse. Like every other is like, this guy could get better. This guy's like, no, dude. Don't touch anything. Make it 80% of what you had last year. You'll be just fine. And I think that's a testament to how easy things are going to be over there.
80% of what he had last year, and he could still end up being, a first team All Big Ten type guy, even with Dante Moore, even with Julian Sayin, who, by the way, is still on the board. Is Julian Sayin going to be your last pick? This is your last pick of our quarterbacks draft for 2026. Will he be your pick, or are you going somewhere else?
You have one more after this, right?
I have one more after this.
I'm going to go with an absolute sicko move here. You ready? Bryce Underwood.
Wow. Will, I ranked 18 quarterbacks. I did not rank Bryce Underwood.
I think that after what I saw out of him kind of in the bowl game down the stretch last year, this is a guy who had such ridiculous expectations on him. Obviously, I've been watching the kid forever, but I think getting over, not just the head coach, but the OC, another dude named Beck, the OC from Utah, and kind of that whole system. I think if you look at every Utah team that we've seen under Whittingham that's been effective, they've been effective with a pig farmer, they've been effective with a backup, they've been effective with Dampier, they
Bryson
really,
Barnes, pig farmer. God, it never
yeah,
gets old.
yeah. Imagine you take the guy that's used to having nothing and give him Bryce Underwood. You take the team that's used to running the football and you give them a guy who's willing to be balanced. And we talked about they just fall forward for 5 or 6 yards. But Bryce Underwood has the ability they've never had. That's why he took the Michigan job. He was fine. He was chilling, putting him. He was out there ready to be retired. He wasn't even on the market, I don't think. And then they were like, "Hey, dude, we got Bryce Underwood. We got an opening. We got some weird stuff that happened." He's like, "You know what? Gotta mess with this. This is kind of nice." And so that being said, I think that the sky's the limit for this kid, and I think that Sayin just, I love that Miami defense. I think they played really hard, but I think that Sayin had so many opportunities down the stretch in the year to prove to me that he was not just another guy surrounded by a lot of talent. And I took him in our last draft, that was postseason quarterbacks, and I just watched him and I felt myself wincing. I was just like, this guy is a good recruit. I get it. He's a guy that looks pretty over his head. The way that Trinidad was supposed to look is how he looked. And so to me, I'm going, hey, another year could really help him. I get it, but I think Bryce Underwood just has way more talent than him. And I think that the system is going to be just as good at Michigan. Now, the talent's not going to be the same, but that puts more opportunities for Bryce Underwood. So, yeah, I think that's my dark horse here. I think that he's going to have a breakout year.
That's bold. That's bold. And look, guys that come into this sport and have to play as QB1 from the jump, as decorated as they are, it just takes time. It just takes time. And true freshmen who are in a situation where their head coach, how do we say this delicately, has his priorities and DMs elsewhere. You feel a little bit of sympathy for Bryce Underwood after the way that everything with Sharon Moore played out. Those are not ideal circumstances. Those are surroundings that you have to overcome and not surroundings that are working in your favor in the way that it was fair to wonder this time last year if there were going to be surroundings that were working in favor. So look, you probably do have to take a guy like that to win this draft. And I'm conflicted right now. I'm really conflicted right now because all the things you said about Julian Sayin are true. And I worry about not having Carnell Tate, who was the best contested catch guy in college football. I worry about having Arthur Smith, who is not the best at anything at this point. And I think that there are real questions after the way that he finished his season and knowing that the last 2 games were kind of like what Marcel Reed endured, to where you're just like, oh, this is not the note that you were supposed to finish on. You did not keep ascending in the way that people thought you would. But he also does still have Jeremiah Smith to the football too. And that seems pretty sick. And their offensive line should be better. They get Bo Jackson Jr. coming back. So I'm going to go with Julian Sayin here. But I'm going to tell you who else I was considering, because it's not who you thought. Do you want to guess who else I was considering?
I have a bad one. I have a Toxic X in here that I was going to consider. Go ahead. Who's yours?
I was considering Keelan Russell, which would be, I would probably get the homer tag because then we would leave Julian Sayin off this board and we'd be like, guys, he was a Heisman finalist last year. You remember that? He still has Jeremiah Smith to throw the football to. And then I would have felt really dumb because it's an Ohio State quarterback and he's going to end up looking really good. And Ohio State quarterback basically is all Big Ten every other year, and getting to New York does not seem very far off at all, considering that there's been 4 different ones who have gotten to New York since Ryan Day's been running that offense, if we're including Dwayne Haskins before Ryan Day was the head coach. Because Justin Fields, CJ Stroud, Julian Sayin. You're very likely going to get to New York. So it's a safe pick, but I really wanted to pick Keelan Russell here. I really do. And I think that Keelan Russell ends up being the starter over Austin Mack. Duh. Otherwise, I wouldn't have considered him. I had him 8 on my board here. History tells us you got to take a flyer in one of these spots. And I think he's that dude, even though he only took 37 snaps. I think he's extremely talented, and not just because of the 5-star stuff, but everything that he did in his high school career and the very limited sample size we saw from him last year was confirmation bias. And I don't want to dismiss Austin Mack and his ability. I think they're going to have a true quarterback battle. I don't think they're going to tip their hand, but I think that he can become the right-handed Michael Penix. And this is someone who, look, he was handpicked by that staff. Jalen Milroe, Ty Simpson, they were there. It was better to have them than not. They were not necessarily handpicked by that staff. And that sounds like I'm dismissing them. If you're listening to this, you know that I had a great appreciation for what Jalen Milroe did by staying, what Ty Simpson did, especially, the first part of last year. I think Russell's the fit that they want. I think he moves to throw. I think he does it with composure and ease. I've got questions all over the offense. Maybe that's something, if they had their offensive line kind of figured out, if they had made some obvious upgrades in the backfield, maybe I'd be a little bit higher on this. But I think an elite quarterback like Russell can make us kind of make all those questions afterthoughts. And he's capable of doing that. So I almost took Keelan Russell here. Let the record show it was almost not the guy who went to New York last year, but Keelan Russell, it's not going to surprise me if he's a better quarterback than Julian Sayin this year.
Yeah, and I think the reason what kept me away from Julian, I can almost talk English here. Let's see. Okay. What stopped me from considering Julian Sayin there was actually the Cardinal tape part of it. Yeah. Whereas when you have two receivers, you have one quarterback. When you have one receiver, you have one receiver. You have Justin Jefferson in Minnesota. And I think that Jeremiah Smith has become a rare target monster in college, a guy that just is like, you have to get him the football. We're going to get him the football. Even with their wide receiver coach, Brian Hartline, who's been awesome moving on to USF, right? Like, I think that even with that, when the game gets on the line, you're looking for Jeremiah Smith. And I think he's the guy they're going to push forward, especially given, his NFL prospects and all that. But to your point, an Ohio State quarterback, I mean, in history of us, being alive, this is the lowest an Ohio State quarterback would go. But I think it requires a lot of things, right? Expanded Big Ten, Indiana dynasty, question mark, Jeremiah Smith. So all that's in his control. I think Russell, I haven't seen enough of him, honestly. I know as a recruit, he was awesome.
I haven't either, for what it's worth. I haven't either. I'm not sitting here pretending like I know the ins and outs of him. This is a very limited sample size. I just like everything I've seen and heard about him.
Yeah. I mean, under DeBoer in that offense, I think that's an easy one. Can I tell you about the Toxic X I almost went after here?
Because it wouldn't. Sam Levitt, by the way, did not get picked. Can we? Let's recap our picks real quick, and then we'll get into some guys that just missed the cut. So you went with Dante Moore, Darian Mensah, Brandon Sorsby, CJ Carr, Bryce Underwood, and I went with Trinidad Chambliss, Arch Manning, Gunnar Stockton, Josh Hoover, Julian Sayin. Man, I think you're going to end up winning this draft, and I don't feel good about that. I would win the vote, and I think you're going to end up winning at season's end.
Well, I got all the other conferences. Now, I could have been a jerk and gone, okay, I'm going to get a Pac-12 guy or Pac whatever they are now. And
you didn't get a single SEC guy. How about that?
No. Because once I realized they were all gone, I was like, what is my ability here? Like, where they're all going to be cannibalizing each other. Levitt's hurt. Not crazy about that. But yeah, I think, you're going to get the SEC guy and the Big Ten. I think you need to hit both of those guys as far as the conference for it to go well. But I think you will. Unless it's Bryce Underwood, who's to say? But yeah, I think this is a perfect draft for you. Some SEC guys that you're going to kind of watch anyway, that your guys, Indiana guy, Ohio State guy. Like, it's a very watch-friendly draft. I'm going to have to really watch some bad football to keep up with my guys.
No, Texas. I mean, look, Texas Tech ran through the Big 12 last year. It's America's conference. Yeah, getting to watch some Miami games. All right, there are going to be some clunkers in there, but getting to watch, okay, Notre Dame's going to have some clunkers as well, even though you just talked about how good their schedule was. You watch some fine football. Don't worry about it. It'll be fun.
You want to hear about my Toxic X I almost drafted?
Please do. Yes.
You heard me talk about the Browns offense the other day, and boy, howdy, where is he now? South Carolina.
And I had Lenoris at 10, Will.
Yeah, I was so close. It was him and Underwood looking at each other, and I was like, I can't bet on Sellers again. I can't do it again. He keeps hurting me. But, man, him in that vertical offense with that motion, with the ability to just be that guy out there. Oh, but, if it doesn't pay out, I'm going to go get the biggest idiot on earth. And this guy who's always drafting, John Ross and stuff, or John Brown in fantasy, he was like, this year, he's going to do it. This year. No, I can't do it again. But I really hope he stays healthy because in that offense, he could be so special, man.
Will, what if 2025 was a bad dream? And what if an offensive line that flirts with mediocrity? Yes, I know with the Ja'Carrius Peak injury, they're still working through that. They still upgraded a ton. They added, 8 offensive linemen in the portal or something like that? What if with just a halfway decent offensive line, an okay offensive line, and a coordinator that's not a total mess. What if?
Like, not the worst offensive coordinator, but maybe a plus offensive coordinator that actually can go to dude's strengths. Like, again, look at that. It just meant more game with two Browse concept guys with the wide splits and like how they just create space. Trying to tackle Sellers in that space sounds horrible, man.
The idea of him having a bounce back year is not far fetched. It's just not. We all agree the surroundings hindered him last year. You
They were
know,
like all world bad, like all world
terrible,
bad.
dude. His pressure rate was 42.4% last year, among power conference quarterbacks with a minimum of 100 pressure dropbacks. Easily the worst. It's terrible. It's 42 point. There are guys that in their entire football careers will not face a pressure rate that high. Okay. And like, I would have to look back at the Stetson Bennett numbers. I wonder if Stetson Bennett has ever had a game in his football career in which his pressure rate was 42.4%. That's crazy. And here he is coming into the situation knowing, yes, this is a new offense. You're going to have to learn it, but you needed a new offense because whatever that was last year, it was bad. And you have a coach that is acknowledged, look, we need to get better in these key areas or else you have no chance. He came back knowing that would be the case and he could have explored other options. And so maybe South Carolina will be rewarded. I thought there was a possibility that I was going to take Sellers late in this draft. I was probably a little bit too SEC heavy to do that, but him not being anywhere in these top 10 lists is kind of surprising to me, given the fact that I think you could very easily make the case that when healthy in 2024, I think he was one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the sport.
I mean, he's first team All SEC in the preseason. The fact that he's
Yeah.
dropped all the way down this far, and it's not his fault. Like, all he did was stay healthy, right? Like, if he had gotten hurt in week 2 and just pieced out, the image we would have had of Noah Sellers would be this, like, oh my God, when he comes back, we're all cooked.
Yeah.
But, like, you know what I'm saying? But he was a good teammate, and he stuck in there and took all the hits. And I mean, yeah, you could fault the decision making here and there, but like I said, it was like he was playing with, guys that weren't exactly on his page. And I think that just having medium talent would do a world of great for him.
Other guys that I had here, I had Noah Fifita at 9 on my board, who is the love child of Russell Wilson and Diego Pavia. Don't steal that, anybody. You know who you are, who steals my content. And then we had, let's see, I had Sam Levitt at 12, just because, as we'll get to here with Cole, Lane just doesn't have bad quarterbacks. I mean, if he stays healthy, Austin Simmons, maybe you could make the case he was a bad quarterback. He didn't stay healthy, whatever the case. He still ended up having a good quarterback. And if he wasn't banged up in the spring, I think he's easily in that top 10, but still a lot of questions about that. And year 1 offense kind of makes me a little bit hesitant there.
If you guys want to call me a homer, no, I sat in on that Cole interview and I listened to him say, "Hey, what was the last time LSU had like Lane Kiffin had like a mid quarterback or not a great quarterback?" And it was like basically never. And it's like, and I'm sitting here going, "Should I draft Sam Levitt higher because of this?" I'm going, I'm not exactly sure Sam Levitt's going to win that job. Like, we've talked about this. There are so many unknowns with Sam Levitt where he's a hit away. And that's the thing. The Austin Simmons point is almost what got me to not take him, because we're play here, play there, a hit here, a bad throw here from them going, we got 2 of these other guys that are just waiting in the wings to take over here, and they're going to get a shot just like Trinidad.
A guy who could very easily end up finishing as an All-SEC quarterback, I think. Like, he has a real path to it. Is also Byron Brown, the new Auburn quarterback from USF, who had historically good numbers last year with Alex Golesh. I think the question I have and the reason I didn't take him was all those missed tackles that he forces a runner. He had 60 missed tackles, forces a runner. Those are good things. But under pressure, 52.8% adjusted completion percentage, which would have been dead last in the SEC.
And that's going to be it. We're going to draft like 8 quarterbacks out of the SEC, and then we're going to hear like a pipe organ, Vlad the Impaler. We're going to hear Alex Golesh like, and then he's just going to end up, Byron Brown's going to be the first team all SEC smoking everyone. Because you're right. We can see that.
Byron Brown's going to put up 40 touchdowns and 10 rushing touchdowns, and we're going to say, why didn't we see that coming? Like, everything was just sitting right there. I do want to see what it looks like if he can't just break all these tackles, and if he's actually forced to kind of stay in the pocket and make some of these quick decisions. So Jade Mayava's coming off the board everywhere. I understand why he does. I think he's got a little bit too much turnover prone to his game at this point. The ball security has to improve. Like, 13 turnover-worthy plays under pressure last year. Doesn't have Mekhi Lemon to be able to get the ball to as his go-to guy. So a little bit concerned about that. But again, like a deep play monster and is somebody that's going to be really fun to watch. Marcel Reed, if you had done this list at the end of the regular season, I think he's very clearly in the top 10. I think he very obviously is one of these guys where we're like, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I do think that for all the good that he did last year, which was lead A&M to its best regular season in 3 decades, the list of power conference quarterbacks who had more turnover-worthy plays than Marcel Reed last year is non-existent. There is no list. It is Marcel Reed. He had the most. Yes. And 17 of those turnover-worthy plays, this is maybe even worse, came when there wasn't a blitz. That's not great. And now you got a first-time play caller with Holman Wiggins after Colin Klein goes back to his alma mater. There are questions there. And there are definitely questions. And I like Marcel Reed, and I think he showed some progress last year. But again, if we're talking about like elite stuff, I think it's fair to point out that.
Yeah, I mean that kind of just I hate to just be a hater, but I just never saw it out of Marcel Reed. Like me, I was pretty like a buck with it where I was like, needs to prove himself, needs to prove himself. Like can he beat people with his arm? His receivers are great, his running backs are great, but they got hurt. The offensive line's great. What's he gonna do? And yeah, I mean, that totally lines up with what I saw, man. I remember even within the context of like the LSU game, he was just like what did you see there? And I think that replacing Colin Klein with Holman Wiggins, his name is Holman Wiggins, you said?
Yeah, he's just assistant at Bama for a little bit as well.
Yeah.
They did the internal promotion thing, and it's kind of Oregon did the same thing with Drew Maringer, and
Yeah.
it's kind of hey, you're trying to get the continuity. South Carolina did it, didn't really work out. Georgia did it with Bobo, moving on from Todd Monken. Like it's kind of a way to try and make sure that your quarterback isn't having to learn a bunch of new terminology, new offense, but there's definitely still some risk in it.
Yeah, and I get it, and I know the guy, his name just sounds made up. I would just verify that was his name. But yeah, I mean, Klein feels like a real difference maker in a way that like a Will Stein may not be. And I think Will Stein's a great coach. I'm not taking that away from him. But Colin Klein was like his own like one man system, which is why he immediately got snapped up by Kansas State and all that. And so yeah, I think that losing that guy matters. And when you look at the performance last year, you go, okay, was this a limited player who Colin Klein perfectly managed? Then the tape came out, and then there was not a way to perfectly manage him, and then Miami just imploded him? Or was this a guy that has some improvement to do with a new guy who isn't Colin Klein? It was just hard for me to see, and how hard they leaned into you guys who doubted Marcel Reed, you're all silly now. It's like, not really, man. Like, honestly, the island feels really nice. The weather's beautiful this time of year. So, yeah, I just don't really think that he's a plus quarterback. I think he's a plus athlete, but not a processor of the game.
For what it's worth, I would take Will Stein over Colin Klein. I would take it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think Will Stein's a better schemer. I think the variety of quarterbacks that he's worked with too. Colin Klein's worked with a good variety of quarterbacks as well. I shouldn't take that away. Will
How about
Howard,
this for that player is more so what you're right. Like I'm not downplaying Will Stein. I threw that as Will Stein. You're so right. Will Stein is a great coach and has done a lot. I'm saying if you had a dream quarterback to work with as Marcel Reed, it's Colin Klein and his concepts.
dream coordinator. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. That's fair. Right behind Marcel Reed, I had the guy that he was used to share a quarterback room with, Connor Wigman, who is coming back, and he finally stayed healthy. 3,400 yards of offense, 36 touchdowns for a 10-win Houston team. You know that all too well, Will. The bad is that the deep ball is virtually non-existent, and a lot of their drives. I watched a lot of Connor Wigman last year on multi-view because I had his go-to receiver as well, who's like this 5'7" dynamo stick in fantasy as well. And their drives, I would just be like, why do they not take shots downfield? Where are they? You have this guy that's got a 5-star arm. It's just the offense. It worked for them, and that's all well and good. But there was just a lot. It was, death by 1,000 paper cuts with them. So it's a little bit of a different type of style to be able to say that he's truly elite. And then John Mateer. Well, John Mateer leading the Heisman race when he was healthy. And there are a lot of guys that are going to be thought of before his name comes up, understandably so. Was the end of season stuff just a byproduct of that? Does he still have some issues to work out? I think he still has some mechanical issues. The happy feet, very well documented. Guy just needs to be able to set his feet. And as great as his feet are when he's running in space, it's so fun to watch the things he can do as a dual threat guy. That is still something that's holding him back from being at that elite level. So yeah, those are the 18 guys that I ranked. I don't know why I settled on 18. Just kind of did.
And Underwood, you said, wasn't in there.
Kenny Underwood wasn't in there. Probably should have been in there.
Should have been 19, buddy.
Dang. And then I didn't include, like, there are a few other like really intriguing guys. And Aaron Philo, I think is going to be fascinating to watch this year. I think that if you are trying to figure out like who are these guys going to be that emerge that haven't been starters before, because history suggests a lot of these guys in the NIL era are going to puke on their shoes. And we're going to be going, why didn't we look at this less decorated player who had a really good opportunity? Why didn't we look at that type of person, like a Rocco Back, somebody who, you know, has a lot of experience coming over from Iowa State to Penn State? He's a guy that maybe I should be talking about more in these conversations. But yeah, that's the unofficial list. That is the draft. We'll put out a vote. We'll do this on Instagram. Will, last year we do like graphics for all of these. I'm asking you on the spot if you want to do this. Do you want to do a graphic for this?
Sure, man. Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. And let us know, what did we mess up? Email us, theogkickoff@gmail.com. Let us know how dumb we are for our quarterback rankings, or how smart we are, because this is totally just up to us. All right, let's kick it to Cole Cubelic. Always great to chat with him. Variety of SEC things that we hit, a lot of Auburn stuff as well. So here is Cole Cubelic. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is Cole Cubelic. Cole, I don't know if I've ever asked you this, but last week we did an It Just Meant More episode on 2021 Ole Miss Tennessee, a game that I'm sure you remember very, very fondly. Did you take home a thrown object? Because I think it's different when it gets thrown in your vicinity. And it's like, hey, this person might have just been throwing me a bottle of bourbon in a water bottle or something.
No, did not. No take homes for me out of that one. Other than my Twitter mentions were completely off the rails. So I think that was the only thing I took home from that game, and could probably never forget it. So yeah.
To be fair, one of your Twitter mentions not off the rails.
There have been two instances in my career that have been different than all others. That was one of the two. You can probably guess the other that we don't need to revisit. So yeah.
No, both involving Ole Miss. Look, I think you would have had, what is possession 9/10 of the law? I think you would have had a legitimate case if any security guard had stopped you in those moments. Now, the thing is, I don't know what would have been worthy of taking home, but if you had taken home that mustard bottle, like that mustard bottle just ended up in the trash somewhere, you could have had a piece of SEC history, and I think it would have been within your right.
Yeah, I think probably the golf ball that Lane held up on TV, if you're looking to like gain the most on eBay out of that, would have been number one. The vape pen, I don't know that I saw vape pen, vape cartridge, vape container, vape inhaler. I don't know what that thing's called. I don't trust people that vape, so I don't really know what you referenced that as. But maybe that had ingredients or liquid in it that was valuable. We could have sold that on the street. I don't really know, but yeah, there was a lot going on, and they were trying to get it off the field quickly. So, bad part for me was that I just referenced that it appeared as though some of the Ole Miss players were getting pissed off, and that if I were Lane, I would take them to the locker room. So therefore, I was afraid and scared for my life, and so that's why it became problematic.
I don't think I've seen you really afraid of things before, and I think if there was ever a sideline analyst who is well suited for that, it is you. And I'm not just casting you up, like you've seen some stuff over the years. But look,
here's the thing: like I've never been afraid in an instance. Like I've done a couple of field rushes that I've had post game interviews. We had that deal, which there's so much distance between the crowd and the field at Neyland. It's not, you can get over there very easily, but it's not like the swamp where they're right on you. So it's also easily avoidable if you need to. Afraid would not be the word. The problem is you don't want to get hit from behind, no matter who you are. Like nobody wants to get hit with a battery in the back of the head. Like that's not, like nobody wants to get hit with a vape. What are these things even called? I probably should have looked that up a long time ago. Like, what do you vape out of? Vape container?
It's a vape pen. It's a vape pen, but vape pens have cartridges in them. And
this thing looked like 2 Zippo lighters with a straw on it. Like that's what it looked like. So I don't know if that's also referenced as a pen or not. But yeah, obviously, here we go. Realistic vape. What is this called? Realistic vape container for smoking. Alternative electronic. So container also works allegedly.
Yeah.
per vecteasy.com. Never heard of that either. So you learn something new every day, Connor.
So, Cole, when you said you had people that were in your mentions about that night, they were actually just vape Twitter, and vape Twitter got on you because they're like, that's not a vape pen. What is this guy
Maybe.
even talking about? Has this guy ever seen a vape pen before? And
Mhm.
the answer would have been no.
And we showed it because I pulled my cameraman over there and I was like, here's the mustard bottle, here's a vape pen, a lot of water bottles, some miniatures. Lane has a golf ball. So yeah. I'll give him credit for creativity. Like if they found it, they grabbed it and threw it. So, it's that was one of the two most interesting nights of my career. I don't think there's any doubt because the plays too were really close. Would Matt Corral have like 186 rushing in that game? And see, here's what makes it crazy for us that a lot of people don't realize. We tried to share this, but I mean, Lane told us in our meetings he might not play. Like his ankle was pretty busted up going into that game. And
Yeah.
he's like, maybe, maybe not. And then we're watching warm-ups. Lane's like, he's gonna go. So, I'm a little handcuffed. I can't run him. And then here he runs for like 186 in the game, whatever it was. So the game itself was just bonkers. And then you had the two big calls that were close. I actually think the officials got both of those right. Here come the mentions again. And then you had the game stoppage, which I had not been a part of a game that had been stopped for that long for a non-injury or weather. So that was also odd. And then of course Lane's first trip back to Knoxville. I mean, he came out in warm-ups and he was immediately, going full heel to the crowd, like knew exactly what he was doing. So that was also hilarious in and of itself. So that was a spectacle of a game, man, in a lot of different ways.
Tom told us that it was the night that Lane Kiffin became a troll, and it was the night that he just leaned into all that stuff. And there's some real truth in that, of like seeing what he got with an in-person reaction as opposed to, as we've talked about, Twitter mentions. It's different when you can look up at that crowd and see that hatred. And to that point in his career, he might hear people chirping him on the sideline of an Alabama game where he's a coordinator, but it's different to be a head coach and look out and go, 107,000 people hate me. That's different.
Yeah, I would say that he has had opportunities, maybe not as much on social, to make certain comments and be a troll prior to that. So I wouldn't give him the birth of that persona that night, but maybe that was the night that the majority of America got to see it, so to speak.
Cole, a guy who was there that night, Alex Golesh, he is now the head coach of the team in which you put your blood, sweat, and tears into and talk about very, very often. What have been your early impressions so far of Alex Golesh?
Just beyond impressed, really. I've been a fan of his for a long time. We met with him multiple times when he was at Tennessee, got to know him there, kept in touch with him when he was down in Tampa. He and I had developed a little bit of a friendship and obviously talked a lot of football. And I never truly thought he was realistically on the radar. I guess you always have to know in the back of your mind, like, okay, if Sumrall's front of the line, Clint represents him. Who else does Clint represent? Maybe there could be a handoff if something falls apart. That could be real. But it wasn't until very, very, very late that I felt like he was even feasible. I think some people thought he was taking Arkansas. Some people thought maybe Auburn just never showed enough interest to make that happen. So I didn't really mentally vet it until it was almost done and it was about to come out. But man, he's just the real deal. He really is. I've said this about a couple guys, and I say it with all college football hires right now, Connor. I have moved relatability and just realism way up the list of importance in today's college football coach. You don't have enough time to be fake anymore. And I know that sounds backwards because it used to be all these phony guys had success in recruiting. But I also feel like they had all this time to go out of their way to prove this is the right place. You're the right guy. You need to be here, whatever that was. Well, now you got to prove yourself. Like we talked to Bielema at the bowl game about this, and he said, portal recruiting is speed dating. I have 30, 45 minutes to prove everything to a guy that I might want. And that's one of the reasons I think Brett's having success right now is like he's relatable. He is genuine. Relatability and being genuine to me are more important than ever. One, think about how many different players there are at different places. Well, what do? They all talk to each other. So if you're playing at Arkansas right now, you probably know someone that either played for or someone else that they know really well that played for Silverfield. So you can get a lot of information just from those guys. They talk in the locker room. It's what it is. And when you go take these other visits, you're going to know guys that have either been there, haven't been there, came with them. So the amount of information between agents, the people they go home and work out with, themselves, social media, they're trading messages, you can find out as much as you want about anybody like that. And so that relatability, and probably more so the ability to not change and just be who you are. Like, I've talked to Golesh about this, and he said, you know, I'm kind of tough to deal with at times. But the guys that have been with me, they now know me and they know this is me. There's no ebbs and flows. There's no ups and downs. There's no maybes one days, definitely's the other days. Like, this is who I am. So the guys that I've had, we have great conversations. We have great relationships because they know that's what it's going to be. And I think you have to have that because, number one, you're recruiting your own roster every day. Every day, these kids can just leave. And now we have this, we're about to snake the rules again, where we're just going to unenroll and then enroll somewhere else and not even deal with the portal. And that's going to be another mess in college football, in my opinion. So you have to have guys that want to be around you, that want to play for you, and probably most important, want to listen to you. Life advice, football advice, take coaching, criticism, whatever that is. And he has proved that over and over and over again. So I have only grown with my appreciation of that hire since he has been the Auburn head football coach.
You bring up a good point because I think going from Harsin to Freeze, the feeling initially, or at least the sense of optimism, was this is a guy who's at least going to know how to work over the right people in the room. And in this day and age, like, there's still value in that. You still need to be able to recruit at the high school level, and Hugh Freeze is going to be able to come and do that. But you're right, he was admittedly uncomfortable with those 24-hour relationships, and you don't have that time to be able to say, hey, this is what it's going to look like over the course of 3-4 years. And I think that you're seeing someone that's approaching this job very differently. And honestly, like, the more I've gotten to know him, and I've only, I've had a handful of conversations and interactions with him over the years, but I kind of think you two are really like in a lot of ways, like just your approach to how you go about your business. Have you kind of seen that, like, that you feel like you and Golesh are two like-minded individuals, kind of in ways that I don't think any Auburn coach, at least not in the 21st century, has been like, even probably the two that you played for?
I would say there's some reality to that. Probably sense of humor more so than anything else. He has a very dry, sarcastic sense of humor. And I think if you don't know him on its surface, you're kind of like, what? And he's been around my wife multiple times. And I know multiple instances that she has said to him, you actually said that to a player? And he's just like, listen, you just got to lay it out. Like, I mean, it's what it is. You don't have time to negotiate and talk and figure things out. Like, I just let him know this is what it is. So yeah, I could see some of that. I'm not going to tell you that I have a football mind anywhere close to his. And I do think he's probably a lot more patient than I am, because you have to have a lot of patience in today's college football, but also patience with a no nonsense mentality of not going to have patience just for the sake of it or to waste time. Like, it's going to be deliberate, and it's going to be a reason for it. So there are definitely some similarities there. And maybe one of the reasons that I've just grown to like him even more since he's been the Auburn head coach.
I could see some FE being dropped every once in a while by
Yeah.
one Cole,
Just
makes
a
a
little
lot
bit.
of sense. Yeah.
Well, the other part too is when you were referencing previous regimes, like him versus the last one, this is one of the things that I think we can talk about all the inherent disadvantages that a Sumrall has, a Golesh has, a Silverfield has, that they haven't been head coaches at these places, and it takes so much more. And everybody's going to compare it to Billy, and I'm just like, why is Signetti not the comp? Well, I mean, why? I don't understand. Like, why? There's other guys that have gone from G5 and had that success. I mean, look what's been happening at Kansas. I know he just retired, but like, look what just happened at Kansas State. Like, nobody thought that he could go from North Dakota State and go in there and win games at the level that he did. And even though it won a national title, it was still impressive because they've essentially had one head coach for 90% that they've had college football. So to go in there and do that was impressive. And the advantages that I think come with it is, one, the appreciation, and two, the understanding of you can't just go mercenary ball and go collect talent. South Florida can't play that game. Tulane can't play that game. Memphis, to an extent, can, probably versus their competition, but not versus all of college football. So they have that inherent I guess, understanding of building a team because that's what they've had to do. And I do think the previous regime was if it looks good and sounds good and runs good and catches good, like let's just go get it. I don't care what it costs. I don't care if they're great in the locker room, bad in the locker room. Like we are going full mercenary mode. Go collect as much talent as humanly possible. We'll let the chips fall where they may. And I don't think the coaches, like the guys in the group that I just mentioned, I don't even think they understand how to play that game because they've never been afforded the luxury to try to play that game.
I think that's a fair point. And I think there are a lot of people that are a little bit more wait and see just because of the point that you brought up of, oh, it's group of 5. It's a different ballgame in the SEC. It's like, well, you got to go from somewhere. You have to go from
Absolutely.
somewhere. And, you kind of, I don't want to say went off, but you teed off a little bit on Auburn fans who were upset to see the likes of Deuce Knight and Cam Coleman hit the portal. And I thought all your criticism was valid, especially for a program that's in the midst of its worst stretch since the Harry Truman administration. And if you're saying like that's going to be the difference, I would definitely 100% push back on that.
Yeah.
Here's where I will side with Auburn fans. And it's something that we've talked about before, both on my show and on yours. The stats that I always come back to, like Auburn having 1,000-yard receiver, or haven't had one since, your teammate Ronnie Daniels, 1999, like awful. Sammy Coates, only all SEC receiver that Auburn has had in the 21st century. And Frank Sanders was Auburn's last first-team all SEC guy at season's end back in 1994. So like on top of that, last time an Auburn quarterback began and finished his career in the program was Jeremy Johnson a decade ago. So I think the part of the angst that might be maybe misconstrued or misplaced even is probably the better word for it, is knowing that those two trends exist and knowing that there is a desire to want to see exciting football and that those guys could be playing exciting football elsewhere. That's not to say Deuce Knight's going to be better than Byron Brown or anything like that, but I think that factors into it. And when two, yes, former 5-star guys, which probably gets too much attention, I think when those guys leave, that's the first thing that probably goes through their mind, whether they realize it or not.
There's a lot of reality to what you just said. The other reality to that is nobody was upset when Connor Lew decided to go to the NFL.
True.
And that's a guy I'd love to have on my team. Nobody was bummed that you had a guard down at the Senior Bowl that was kicking people's ass in drills. There were a lot of other guys. I think you have potentially an elite edge rusher that transferred to one of your biggest rivals and going to be wearing a Georgia uniform this year. Nobody seemed to be worried about that at all. It was the focus on the two individuals. And it honestly had nothing to do with them not thinking they're great players or could be great players or would be great players. It was just that collectively it's so much bigger than that. And I'll say this, it was more than Auburn fans. My frustration came from a lot of places in that there was this mindset of that the program's foundation could be laid in the lap of those two individuals and everything would be okay. And I personally think that's bullshit. I do. I don't think that those two were going to take Auburn to 10 wins. And if you subtracted them, they're automatically going to 5 or 6. And once again, that's not even their level of talent. It's just that there's so much more necessary to go out and put a good team on the field as opposed to what we just referenced, playing mercenary ball, and let's just go get the most talented guys that we can find. Because as I asked Greg on the show, who as a Rhodes Scholar would so brilliantly answered, what games did Auburn win because Deuce Knight was in an Auburn uniform? Mercer, as he said. Cool, you can have it. Which ones did they win because Cam Coleman was playing there? None that I can recall.
The Vanderbilt game was way more fun because Cam Coleman was a part of it, though. You got to admit
it was
that.
A loss.
The game itself was fun.
They lost the game. So not to say that those two couldn't have helped win a lot of games down the road, but there have been, I'll just say this about any other school, and if you have some in mind, you can share them with me. The level of obsession of two guys who had done, in the grand scheme of things, very little at the place that they were by any team's fans. I'm not sure I've seen much like it before. There have been a couple of guys that, we have to have him. We have to keep that guy. I get it, but like this was going to different places. And some of that came from inside that building. And that's really where my frustration started. because there's no coach that should be forced to keep a coordinator or a player or 3 players or 8 players or 3 coaches. You hire a coach to come do his job, and that is to win games. And if that's with that guy that he chooses to keep, great. If it's not, tough, move on. We're going to find ways to win without him. So there was a lot to that. I actually look back on it, and it was probably a little bit too directed at the actual individuals. Now, I'm not going to tell you that the individualism of wearing a pink ski mask in a game doesn't annoy me, because it does. And I'm not telling you that there were some things that happened on the field that were a little bit annoying, because there were. But at the end of the day, the premise of that was no 2 players, specifically those 2 players, were going to be the building blocks of the future of Auburn football. That just wasn't real, in my opinion. And there were a lot of fans and a lot of other people around the program that were treating it like it was going to crumble if those 2 did not return and play again.
And I think that's the better, much better way to look at it. Like, you can understand, yes, it's probably going to be painful to have an in-game update while you're watching an Auburn game and see Cam Coleman make some ridiculous catch. And who knows, maybe 2 years from now, after Trinidad Chambliss is out of eligibility finally, maybe there will be moments in which Auburn's like, dang, Deuce Knight's doing some great things. But the alternative is now you get to bring in Byron Brown, who is one of the most intriguing players in college football. This is year 5 for him in this offense, which is a real treat. And that does not happen in this day and age of college football. He's coming off this historic season at USF. And, you know, it's interesting. Diego Pavia is the only player who went from the group of 5 ranks directly into the SEC and finished as an all-SEC quarterback at season's end. Auburn's only all-SEC quarterback post Cam's Jarrett Stidham. So like it's a huge area in which, you know, you could ask that question of like how, like, what's the realistic expectation? And I think you can go in a lot of different ways with it. Where have you kind of settled on a fair expectation for Byron Brown, knowing that there is a transition that's going to come, but at the same time, this is a physically gifted player who's done a lot of really good things already.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, because I'm confident in what he has the ability to do. I'm confident in what that offensive staff can put him in position to do in this offense. I'm confident in the fact that Cole Best comes to play center and they have worked together. Confident in a couple of the running backs that are going to be there. Singleton, Nimrod, Koger. You got receivers that he's played with that are going to be there. All of that the little intricacies that go along with that should be managed and taken care of. This is going to come down to 2 things. Number 1, how good can the defense be again this year? And number 2, can the offensive line just get the job done? Not be dominant, not be the best in the SEC, not be up for the Joe Moore Award. Can they just do their job at a plus extent, where we're not talking about them getting him killed? He's not running for his life. They're able to facilitate the run game a little bit more. He should have a good year. I think Auburn will be in a bowl game. I think it's fair to wish for a game or 2 over bowl eligibility. Because of some of the veterans that they're going to have. And we stated earlier in the show, having guys that have played this game and understand it with the people around them have massive advantages in today's college football. Because if you're playing mercenary ball, you better have a lot of them. And that's why Georgia can still be good and Ohio State can still be good, because they do have a lot of them there. And so when they lose one, it's not totally different. But look back 2 years ago, Tate Ratledge gets hurt. That was a different football team. Not a different offense, not a different offensive line. That was a different team after he got banged up. There's a litany of guys that we have lost in that sounded terrible. I didn't mean it that way. That have been injured on their teams in the last 2-3 years of college football that have done so much more damage than we would have ever imagined. Because we used to only think quarterback, running back that gets 30 carries a game, star wide receiver, star edge rusher, and well, everybody else can survive. Now, you lose your big D tackle and you don't have any more of them, you're in trouble. You know, you lose an off-the-ball linebacker and you've only been look at Alabama last year. When those linebackers got beat up, they were a different team altogether. So it's hard to play that game of just collecting talent and saying we're bigger, stronger, faster than everybody, because you're not, especially when your 2s and 3s come in anymore. But some of that continuity will help. It'll help a lot. The big question we have now, and Greg and I talked about this on our show this morning, is leadership. Glue guys, hard hat guys, utility guys. Call them whatever you want. Let's use Texas as an example. You think about guys like Gunnar Helm, Jake Majors, Michael Taft, these guys that have been around the program 4 or 5 years. They know everything. They can tell guys what to do. They hold them accountable. Leadership is a big part of it. And I don't know where a lot of it's going to come from a lot of teams right now. You don't know. I don't know. Hell, the coaches halfway don't know. I talked to a coach this morning about his football team, and he's like, your guess is as good as mine. We got to get out there and do some stuff and try and figure it out. So there's this new learning curve for everybody in so many different areas. They have a lot of pieces to be better than people think. And I think they have a good coaching staff. They're not going to be overwhelmed. But it doesn't matter who your best player is. Like, that was the coolest thing about Indiana this year, is Indiana had a superhero, but every Saturday, they didn't go out there and ask him to put his cape on and carry him around. That's when you know you got a great team. When your Superman doesn't have to enact his superpowers in every game because he's got, or maybe I should say Batman, because he's got so many Robins that are willing to do their job. He doesn't have to put the utility belt on half the time. All right, now minute 40 left against Penn State on the road. Like, strap it up. Here comes the shark spray and the net gun and whatever else we need. Like, let it all go out then. But like, they didn't even use him like a superhero. And that's where I think everybody should be trying to get to, but it's just hard because you don't have enough time to be able to put all that together anymore.
And probably in an ideal world for Auburn, much like what Indiana was able to get with those James Madison transfers, that's where the leadership comes from, is getting those USF guys that already know the program, and it's got to be the right blend. And obviously there were a lot of holdovers from the previous regime at IU to be able to make that work as well. But adding those guys was really big for Kurt Cignetti, of course. I haven't asked you this since the season ended. What was the Cole autopsy on Alabama's historically bad run game? Like, and what's your level of confidence that it can turn around? Because it's not like they added, big time, running back transfers, and even the offensive line transfers seem like more projects than established guys. Like, what's your take on that whole dynamic after obviously everybody at Alabama was just kind of like, this is just worse than we could have ever imagined?
I think there's two ways to look at this, Connor. Number one, we have fun sometimes talking about generational running backs, but I still don't think we have a true appreciation for generational running backs. Your Adrian Petersons, Bo Jacksons, Derrick Henrys, even the Mark Ingram, Carnell Williams, Darren McFadden. Like, we think some of those guys are just really good, and we don't realize to the extent how great they are. And when you don't have that, and some of the other stuff is not exactly in line to where it needs to be, the run game's intricate. And people don't want to believe that because they just think that it's like blunt force trauma, who wants it more? And that's not true. Here's another thing that hurt Alabama this year. This is collective, kind of across the board. These defensive coordinators don't care anymore. They don't care. The script has been flipped on presentation of offense with all these different options. We can hand it off. We can pull it, throw it. He can run it. He can run it and then pop it. He can run it and pop it laterally or down the field. We have this jet sweep motion. We can hand it to him if we want to. If not, we can turn and throw it back to him. All that stuff used to cause overthought and overcommitment to defending every bit of it. And I had conversations with probably 4 or 5 SEC D coordinators this year and just said, y'all don't care anymore, do you? And they're like, nope. We're done with it. We can't defend it all. There's literally no way. So why would we try? So now it has turned more into, you're going to get yours. And instead of just trying to keep you from getting yours the whole game, by God, we're going to get ours. So you're going to get a 40, a 30, a 20, a couple 10s, an 80. You're going to get that. But we're going to get our -5s and our -10s and our -2s and our no gains. So we're going to outnumber you. We're going to move at a rate that we've never seen before. Go watch Oklahoma. It's unlike anything that I have ever seen in one football season outside of the Texas game, in which they decided not to move for whatever reason, and I had no idea what they were thinking there. But these people are lining up places, moving to places, moving the amount of people that more than we've ever seen in college football. And it's because I think the D coordinators have just said, it cannot all be defended. So we are going to cause chaos to the extent that the options are now removed. So you can think that you're going to run some kind of play action deep into the pocket and wait for a route to get open, but we know you don't have enough numbers to pick it up. Also, and I know you know this because you pay attention, we have become so reluctant to sort things out in protection. It's just not a real thing. Kentucky was one of the only teams in the league last year that actually tried to sort pressures out instead of just saying, well, by default, we'll just do this and hopefully we'll all pick it up. Well, the coordinators are too smart for that too, because they get your tendencies early and they know, okay, you're sliding away from the back or 3/4 slide to the back. Cool. We will dedicate more bodies to that side, occupy, and then bring a replacement defender to a gap that's not being blocked. And therefore, we're home and we're going to hit your quarterback or at least force him to throw it early. All those things are happening together. These coordinators are not trying to put these elaborate calls in. They're not even waiting. Like I had Austin Armstrong in the bowl game, Houston's D coordinator, who, the SEC thinks that he's a shitty coach all of a sudden. And he's like, I don't even wait to see the personnel grouping anymore. He's like, I just call a defense. Because the more I wait, the harder it's going to be to process once we figure out what it is. So we've gone more to how much can we defend with one call? And we make our adjustments around that. So therefore, because the reason I got that answer from him is when I was watching him on film before the game, I said, how in the world do you get your guys to play so fast? All of them. They are flying all over the place. Indiana, again, I hate to keep using a great example of this as well.
Go ahead, Cole. You're good.
Like those guys, number one, they played maybe the most unselfish football that I've ever seen in an entire season, but they fly around. They're not trying to defend every single possible scenario on the field. So the script has kind of flipped there a little bit with how things are being defended. And Alabama kind of paid the price for that with an offensive line that wasn't great. They had probably the left tackle, I don't think is a tackle. The center was dinged up half the year, and he was a top 3 player on their football team. I thought at times he was the best player on their football team, and he played through some brutal injuries down the stretch, so he wasn't as effective. The tight end, who was probably their second best blocker, was only available about 60% of the time for him last year. And you had running backs who were not adept to run the things they needed them to run. When I say that, I mean, all right, if we're running outside zone, I don't need you to take the ball and sprint. I need you to have patience. I need you to wait. I need you to see things develop, and then I need you to sprint. Or if we're going downhill right now in inside zone, I need you to just go. And there was a little bit of lack of connection there with how things needed to be run. And when you mix all that together, and I thought another mistake they made was overthinking at the line of scrimmage. They did a lot of things at the line of scrimmage and waited way too late in snap counts when sometimes, like Sark likes to, he referenced it as call it and run it. Like sometimes you call inside zone and you just go up there and run it. It might fail, but at least people know you're going to make a call, come to the line, and run the play. They have to be aware of that also. And I didn't think they did that enough last year. So to make an extremely long answer short, it was collective. It was not just the O-line. It was not just the quarterback. It damn sure wasn't the coordinator. It was a little bit of running back, a little bit of tight end, a little bit of O-line, a little bit of coordinator, a little bit of maybe trying to do too much. And honestly, personality-wise, I'm not sure it's who they were last year. Like, who was their Tyler Booker on offense last year? Who was their Robbie Oots on offense? Who was their CJ Dupree on offense last year? The undersized center with a broken ankle half the year? Like, he ain't that guy. And it's nothing against, I love Parker Brailsford. I would adopt Parker Brailsford. Like, that's not, I'm just saying, like, he couldn't be that guy with what he was in that offense last year. So you don't send an army onto a beach that aren't trained killers. Like, you don't send pilots into man-to-man combat. And there was an extent of Alabama last year that felt like they were trying to send a bunch of pilots into hand-to-hand combat. And it wasn't going to work that way.
Alabama, Bay of Pigs. I know what you're getting at. It makes a lot of sense. It really does. Cole, Lane Kiffin going out and getting Jordan Seaton. It feels like the type of move that we could look up in November and be like, man, isn't it nice that Sam Leavitt is so well protected? Not a guarantee. Not a guarantee that Sam Leavitt's going to stay healthy this year. Not even a guarantee that Sam Leavitt's like going to be their starting quarterback the entire season. I'm fascinated to see kind of how that works out. How important was that, especially knowing that, you're not going to have your starting quarterback, or at least what looks like your starting quarterback, available in spring ball?
It's important because it just adds to everything else that he will have and is going to be able to throw out. The only reason I don't want to downgrade it at all. I think Jordan Seaton is one of the most individually talented linemen I have seen in the last 6 or 7 years in college football. Doesn't mean he's one of the best, but watching him change direction and watching him physically move the way he does, it is not human to be able to do the things that he does at his size. He's not a super polished football player yet. He can get to that. And they have some real offensive line brain power inside that building that's going to be able to help him get there. The good news is, regardless, I can only think of one Ole Miss season where the quarterback absolutely got his teeth kicked in on every game. I think it was Darts last year. Like down the stretch, he just started to get pummeled. The offensive line's never been a huge problem for him, and it's because of how he operates. He's going to create space. He's going to push the tempo. He's going to make you defend the entire field. And usually when he has a mobile quarterback to also defend, it makes it that much more difficult as to where you're going to implement your manpower. So he takes by design. I don't think it's super intentional because, trust me, he's told me how frustrating he's been with some offensive lines he had. He wants them to be great. But by design, he takes some of the strain off of what's needed from that position. And having a guy, I'm going to tell you who I think their most important player is. Now, obviously, Sam Levin's got to be healthy. Trey'Dez Green's the one to watch.
Yeah.
Because when Lane Kiffin has that guy, like nobody gives the tight end last year near enough credit. And Daquan Wright was awesome for them.
Yes, he was.
Awesome. I forget the kid's name. They had it when they went toe-to-toe with Alabama like 4 or 5 years ago. Big, tall, lanky kid at tight end. Like he had a monster game against Alabama. They couldn't keep him healthier on the field for the whole season. But like when Lane has
Caden Prieskorn?
Well, no, Prieskorn was a badass the whole time he played. Sure. This kid didn't play like the whole season. But he had a huge game against Bama, big, long, athletic tight end. And when he can implement that kind of a weapon in that spot, like they're almost close to not being defendable. Like they're not. And I think when he has this kind of a freak athlete, at that spot is Kenny Yeboah, I think. That year against Alabama. Yeah, it's out there. Yeah, it's 7 for 181, 2 touchdowns in that game against Bama. Yeah, he was a dude in that game. So when Lane can implement that from a matchup perspective, you're in trouble. And I don't know what people are going to do with him because he wants to be. I've talked to Trey'Dez. He wants to be a tight end. He's not one of these receivers they're trying to force down in there. So he's going to keep trying to get better with the blocking part. He'll never be George Kittle blocking. But as long as he's willing and he gives you the effort and he can not be a liability with that, they're going to be hell on wheels when he's on the field. I'm just telling you. So, yeah, Jordan Seaton's a big part of it. They need running back to be good. And I worry a little bit about the style backs they have. Do they fit in? Like, you think about, like, the Jerrion Ely, Snoop Connor type guys that can get in. Like, Kewan was different. And we should have known. Lane told us before the season last year. We had their first game. He's like, guys, y'all keep asking about all these receivers. He's like, our running back's the one that's different. Like, we have not had anything like him. I'm like, y'all have some pretty damn good backs. Like, he's like, no, physically, we have not had one like this guy. And he was right. Like, Kewan Lacey's special. So I'm interested to see how the backs fit into what he wants to do, whether that be movement, catching the ball out of the backfield, dealing with the pace and tempo, whatever it is. But Trey'Dez Green is the one to watch. He's the one that makes him extremely different. And they got to have, obviously, I think having a great offensive line will help. Jordan Seaton can be a big part of that. Sam Levin's going to be a massive part of it. Here's the thing, though, that I said going into last year. I'll say this about Josh Heupel, too. Who was the last quarterback under Lane Kiffin that failed? That's a great article for you to write in the preseason. Like one of your, how many years we got to go back and do this or whatever. Like, what's the worst season? Seriously, a quarterback has had under Lane Kiffin.
2018 FAU would probably be the one that comes to mind. Their year 2 offense, first year of Charlie Weiss Jr. after he hires him, youngest FBS offensive coordinator ever, or at least believed to be.
Feels like that worked out.
Yeah. Needless to say, Lane doubling down on that, pretty smart move. But yeah, that year 2 offense that he had where they went 5-7. I'm blanking on the name.
Chris Robinson was 2,533 yards, 12-12. Okay, so he's the last one. Yep. That's about a failure. Yeah. I mean, especially in Lane standards, that's a failure of a season.
And then they were much better in 19.
Yeah. So 1 year in the last decade. I mean, chances are, even if Sam Levitt somehow doesn't play, it's not like it's going to be gross.
Yeah.
Like, same thing with Heupel. Like, do the study on Heupel too. Like, I don't know if he's ever had a quarterback that failed. That was just miserable. I know Joe Milton wasn't Hendon Hooker, but how many of them have just been terrible? How many Chris Robinsons has Josh Heupel had?
I don't think it's fair to say any. He even had injuries at UCF and still found a way to make it work.
So,
and yeah.
Jordan Seaton will be big, but I'm healthy quarterback, massive. Trey'Dez Green is the one that will make them different.
Okay, I know you got a million things going on, so I'll let you answer either one of these questions. I have an SEC offensive line question, which, knowing you've got like 6 different ways you can go with this. So you can either answer that one or the dog poop question. Which one do you want to close with?
I don't want to talk about dog poop anymore because I'm too lazy to update my cameras, and I need to update my cameras. And
you don't need cameras. I have the solution for you. I had the solution. We had a similar issue with our house on the side right here of our house, where we were finding like similar to the ones that I've seen with you. Not to say it's the same type of dog, but like big, like your dog's doing this. This ain't, you're not sneaking it. The signs, just off Amazon, bought signs. Clean up after your dog. You put them there every single time. There's a level of shame that one person faces if they see a sign and they blatantly disobey it.
I disagree.
And we have had no issues since then. It has been a night and day thing. That and the no soliciting thing on my doorbell, haven't had one solicitor since we put it up 3 months ago. Used to get them like at least once or twice a week. Signs. People still care about signs.
I used to have signs around towards the back alley where this all started that essentially told them they were being watched on camera, and that didn't work. So I don't know.
Front yard, maybe a little more shame.
You give humans more credit than I do.
Yeah,
I think most humans are terrible.
That's fair. All right. If you had to go into battle with one SEC offensive line for 2026,
oh golly,
who's your unit? Because there's a creative answer you could give to this. I don't think you will. You've brought them up already, but I don't think you would necessarily go in this direction.
It's probably Georgia still.
Yeah.
The underrated one's going to be Missouri.
Yep.
That nobody's going to talk about. I think they have a chance to still be pretty good. I'm really interested to see what their offense looks like. I mean, if we're just talking like we have a black Amex and we want the most expensive that looks the best and looks the coolest, it'd probably be Texas. And I think A&M's has a chance to be pretty good. But I'm interested to see how the lack of depth changes theirs, because last year they rolled so many guys and that paid big dividends for them late. And they're going to have some transfers in they're going to play this year, but it's got to be Georgia right now. I mean, Bobo will be back. You'll have some center depth. If Ernest Green gets back to Ernest Green 2 years ago, he can be elite. Juan Gadsden was on the block party literally every Monday, I feel like. Dontrell Glover was on the block party like every other Monday. So they got some guys that want to mess you up and trade some paint and try to dent your face mask. So if I can start with that, we're in pretty good shape. Now, offensive line coach change. I don't like Searles not being there, but we'll see. I'm not saying it can't work or won't work, but I'll probably go Georgia right now. Yeah.
Trade some paint. I'm stealing that one. That's good.
You can have it.
That's really good.
Stole it from Days of Thunder.
Oh, that's good. That's a movie I need to rewatch at some point. Probably saw it like 15 years ago at some point, and just not at a time when I was able to appreciate it. Need to go back and watch that one. Kentucky, I was interested to see if you were going to bring them up with the big moves that Will Stein made already.
I just don't know. I got Kentucky and Arkansas in a category right now of.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't. The Shabola kid that they got from
Ohio State,
I think has some talent. Lance Hurd has a ton of talent, but like, what are we on SEC school 4 or 5 now? I mean, I just don't know. I think the quarterback situation can work. Love CJ Baxter when he's healthy. Love Javonte Barnes when he's healthy. Nick Henderson when he's healthy. I guess that's Kentucky in a nutshell. Are they healthy? If they're healthy, they're going to be pretty sporty. And then Arkansas, I don't know. I mean, I have no idea what to expect from. They're the biggest question mark for me in the SEC right now. And I love Silverfield, but it's like there's a lot of unknowns there with that team right now.
don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be. Is it going to be KJ Hill? Like, are you going to go that route? He's the guy that's got familiarity in the system. Yeah. A lot of questions right now. At least we got a spring that
Yep.
we get to decide this, though. We're going to have actual spring
And we
football.
might actually see a little bit of it, which is
Yeah.
awesome for people like you and I. All the fans are going to talk about how terrible it is, but like I actually like spring games because I feel like I can watch them and learn something. Even if it's just one position, one guy. Like if you can take a Sharpie and say, nope, we're not gonna lean on that guy. No, we're not. He's not it. But we can go talk about the next guy or the next guy. They're super valuable for me. So I'm hoping they're all on TV. I'm hoping I get to work a couple of them, and I hope they all at least do some sort of game atmosphere now that we're not terrified of losing guys and we don't have to do street carnivals for our spring games.
Street carnivals were popping, man. They were a lot of fun. Love talking about those. No, not at all.
Don't need it.
Cole, appreciate it as always. We'll do it again soon, man.
Thanks, Connor. Good catching up.
All right, well, let's close with some lad of the week. I'm going to start us off here at the NFL Combine. Casey Concepcion, the former A&M receiver who came by way of NC State. If you didn't see this, he spoke in front of everyone at the NFL Combine, and he spoke about, or at least after the fact, he released a statement talking about his speech impediment. He has battled a stutter his entire life, and he had the hashtag in there, stop the negativity. Someone who has been, I think, in the spotlight for a long time of his football career. And I admittedly, like, I didn't know that was part of his background or anything like that. It's never something that we've talked about on this show. But one of the things that he talked about in this statement, because apparently he got backlash from people that were seeing him speak for the first time and made fun of him or something, which is just an insane thing to do. But one of the things he talked about was don't be afraid to speak up with confidence and to understand that you have things to be able to say. And even if it doesn't come out in the way that everybody's used to hearing them, that's perfectly fine. And you do you. And I love this. I absolutely love this because a lot of people deal with this and a lot of people aren't even really diagnosed with it. And they just think it's nerves or something like that. And they are always probably fearful of public speaking, and it probably creates a lot more stress than any of us in the outside world actually know. Very few people have to get in front of a camera and speak to an audience wherein you could all of a sudden be speaking in front of an audience of millions if you say the wrong thing or if you stumble over this word that you just can't get out and it looks like you don't know what you're talking about or like you're stupid or something like that. And I just give him a lot of credit for being able to speak on this because it's probably a really uncomfortable area of his life. And if he could snap his fingers and change it, I'm sure he would. But it also speaks to the character, someone that did great things at A&M in just 1 year there and is a reason why you need to actively look at the transfer portal, look at the guys that you're bringing in, because you can't tell me that they get off to that 11-0 start without him, without the presence that he had in that locker room, all the different things he did for a receiver room that really was desperate for a guy like that. Hadn't had a guy like that in a while. It just showed up like a pro and still very much looks like a pro. So I hope that guy gets a bigger platform to be able to speak, not because I want to see him tackle this, but because clearly he's doing some good with this and he's doing some good in the world. So yeah, I hope he gets in front of the microphone a ton because not a lot of people speak out on this. I know Bo Jackson dealt with a speech impediment throughout his life, and he's spoken about that in the past. But, man, I hope good things are coming on the way for Casey Concepcion. I don't find myself rooting for the Buffalo Bills or for them to get better, especially when the Bears are going to, like, meet him in the Super Bowl. But if he ended up in his home state in New York playing for the team that his dad rooted for, I think that'd be really cool. Just hope that Casey Concepcion has a long NFL career. And if he doesn't, I hope he does a lot of good in this world because I think he's got the right perspective for it.
That's fitting because, like, the last thing I said before the interview was piping him up and the great receivers they had at A&M last year. And, I mean, yeah, it was just electric every time he touched the ball. That story reminds me of my Uncle Steve. Rest in peace. Awesome dude. I am like the runt of my family. I'm sure we've talked about this before. And my dad's whole family was like NFL size. And my Uncle Steve was like 6'6". He was like 3-something, big old boy. And he had a really bad stutter, but he was like the funniest guy I've ever met in my life. And the way he got around it was he could trick his brain by singing or telling jokes. And it was so funny because he'd do this thing where he would get right to the punchline of a joke and it would like hit him and he would just like, so we'd be like, I know there's going to be the funniest joke. What's he going to say? And then off of that, he would do this bit where he would just pretend he wasn't telling a joke and walk away, which was like even funnier. And so like, it's so
It's a good way to do it.
because like I have like a connection with that because I would see Michael Steve, he bring me like so much joy. And it'd be like as a kid, you're like, is this guy messing with me? It's like, no, like it's not like these people genuinely like are like, if they could change it, they would. And so I think it's so cool to find something out like that about an athlete that we kind of like idolize in a way. And it's kind of weird when you're talking about college guys, but guys that have already achieved so much in their young lives to be able to stand up and, like you said, speak with confidence to be like, hey, you shouldn't make yourself small. And that's why it makes me think of my uncle because he was the same way. He'd be like, hey, he'd try to, light up the room. He would light up the room. He'd be the coolest guy ever and overcome that. And he was a great communicator. He was a great leader. He was a CEO. So I think it's super cool to watch people say, like, actually, I'm going to beat this thing's butt.
Yeah, I know my guy Brad Crawford also dealt with that growing up. And, look at Brad now. He's big time. He's on CBS and speaking on TV about this silly little sport that we get to talk about. So, yeah, I hope that inspires people because it was a really good message. And I like seeing Casey have the confidence to step up and deliver it.
Absolutely, man. So I got a little bit of a 2-pack here, a little 2-for-1, 2 Iowa grads for you here, Connor. Number one is going to be Jennings Dunker. That is, of course, the mullet-wearing AI creation of Midwestern football. The swing offensive lineman for the Iowa Hawkeyes showed up at the combo, showed up at the Senior Bowl, really made noise, had great interviews, was rocking the mullet. Looked like he was ready to just like be in a Duluth Trading Company commercial, really ready to play some NFL football. And, he tested even better at the combine. He showed up really well at the Senior Bowl. But if you guys haven't seen Jennings Dunker yet, look him up. He looks like an absolute lad. Looks like he can save you from a fire. Looks like the type of guy that you could trust to watch your cat over a weekend. But he also looks like he'd really protect probably the interior part of your offensive line. Don't think he probably has, but he did really well in the cone drills and stuff. So maybe he does have a little bit of that quickness, but just a guy that feels like he's going to be around in the NFL forever and just really exemplifies what we imagine when we think of an Iowa player.
Do you think, yes, when I close my eyes and picture what does an Iowa player look like, it is this flowing red-headed mullet. And I just wonder, do you think when he is at the beach with his family in the parking lot, he has women in their 70s come up to him and go, "Oh, you're a ginger." Do you think he gets that, or is that just me?
I bet he would be so sweet. He'd be like, "You're right. I am a ginger. Thank you." Like
Yeah.
he just seems like he has that type of smile. I knew where you're going with that. But yeah, he is a ginger. That is Mount Ginger, and he's representing the great nation of Ireland and Iowa well.
Yeah, man, he's a dude. He is an absolute dude. And you'll be seeing that mane coming out of an NFL helmet probably for a long time.
Yes, and another Iowa graduate, former defensive back, obviously Iowa, Mark Stoops. We talk about Chungus or Hoss here, 2 former Hosses, Jennings Dunker and Mark Stoops. Mark Stoops has been hired as a special assistant to the regional manager at the University of Texas. Connor, what do you think his day-to-day will be like over there?
I'm so fascinated for a variety of reasons. One, Mark Stoops is a man that I shouldn't say he collected because he did not have to receive his buyout money within 60 days per the original terms of his contract. They have this 6 yearly installments of like $6.7 million to get to that $38 million, whatever the number ended up being. It was like $37.7 million. And this is a man that is making really good money to do absolutely nothing on top of the bourbon money that he's probably getting to. And he decides, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go work with my arch nemesis. Mark Stoops and Will Muschamp are not getting each other's Christmas cards. That is so, so funny that of all the places to pick to be special assistant to the head coach or whatever, he picked being with Will Muschamp. It's really bizarre. It's kind of like he just wants to be in those meeting rooms, maybe to troll him a little bit, or maybe to show that he knows more of what he's doing than Muschamp, or he just has such little faith in Will Muschamp that he's just sitting there waiting in the wings to be promoted to defensive coordinator.
That's actually such an all-pro hater move to join your arch nemesis staff so that if they get fired, you're there going, I always hated that guy.
Look,
I always hated that guy. I told you he's a bum.
I think when Apollo Creed lost that fight to one Rocky Balboa, and he's helping him train for Clubber Lang, I think Apollo realized I'm not it anymore. And there was a level, Apollo in his days, RIP, did not have a humble bone in his body, but I think deep down he realized I need to go help out this guy. It'd be like the right thing to do. Do you think Mark Stoops is approaching that this way? Because I would love, just love, Truth Serum Mark Stoops this fall. I would. And I think those two need to be filmed at all times. It's not quite to the level of like a Bobby Petrino, Jimbo Fisher dynamic, but I don't think it's that far off. I would. You talk about like people are like, oh, why are people paying for these, these fights on Netflix and stuff like that? Or like, why do people still buy these fights? I would buy a live feed of Mark Stoops and Will Muschamp when, tensions are high. I really would.
Yeah, and the referee, of course, Bert.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
With his Iowa tattoo, you get him in there to break up the fight at the end, make sure nobody has cardiac arrest. Yeah, I mean, imagine you're a defensive player here that is signed up for PK, our guy who still thinks he's a schematic genius, but a very different coach to Coach Boom. And, you say, hey, he's sitting there, he's talking X's and O's with you. He's saying, okay, we're going to put you at this made-up position. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, he's unceremoniously fired. You bring in Muschamp. Okay, it's cool. It's the new Muschamp. He's chill. He's going to be fine. He's not going to yell at you too much. Dude, that clip of him at LSU, that was 20 years ago. Don't worry about that. You also bring in Mark Stoops.
I just want Texas defensive players who are now well compensated to maybe risk a little bit of that NIL money, have some side bets going on for a practice, I don't know, like mid-March, and have a bet going of who can make their face redder between Will Muschamp and Mark Stoops. Who can make their coach more upset because you think you've seen every shade of red. You have not. You absolutely have not. Oh gosh.
And then you got Sark, who's like making different shades of like red and brown mixed together. He's breaking new anger. Like he's just covered in sweat. No player is having a good time at Texas this offseason. I think that's the coaching staff. They saw Kirby yelling at people on the megaphone. They were like, we need, you know what? Bleep, adapt or die. Bleep the NIL. We're soft here. We're going to get coaches who are just going to scream for 25-8. And if that doesn't work, we don't know what to do. We're done.
It's a bad time to be a whiteboard in Austin, Texas, buddy. Let me tell you. Oof. All right. Let's end with something that might mean too much. We had a great email come in from Reed Cousins. And by the way, just a little reminder for those that didn't listen last time, it might mean too much. SEC stories that are over the top, fandom moments in which you have to kind of check yourself a little bit and be like, yeah, maybe this is a little bit intense for just to explain to anybody else. They would probably look at me like I have six heads. So this one from Reed. Reed says, I was active duty in the Navy and underway on a submarine in 2014. My captain was an Auburn alum, and he knew that I was a big Georgia fan. You are required to come up to Periscope depth once a day in order to check in and download any messages. As I'm walking past the captain's stateroom, he calls out my name. I go in and see what he needs from me. He asks if I would like to join him to watch some of the Auburn versus Georgia game. I, of course, say absolutely and sit down with him in his stateroom. We get to talking, and I tell him how amazing it is that our daily operations allowed us to be at Periscope depth during the Auburn versus Georgia game. He just kind of looks at me and smiles. I asked, did you time it so that we could come into the Periscope depth just so that you could watch some of the game? He just responded with, being the captain does have its perks. We enjoyed the game a little longer till it was time to submerge again. And in case you forgot, this was the year after prayer at Jordan-Hare, and the Dogs won big at home behind stellar performances from Gurley and Chubb. Yep. Taking an entire Navy submarine and deciding, look, if I just make sure that we have this, because that's a 3:30 on CBS game. I assume it was in 2014. And if you make that decision at that point, risking all other factors, you're a fan for life. I can't fault you for that. I don't know the potential issues that could come with that. If like that's a safety thing that could come up of, it's safer to come up to Periscope at certain times of day, but I sign off on that. I see no problem with that. Reed's captain did the exact right thing that any of us would do.
This is a perfect, it might mean too much, and we really appreciate you saying that, Ed. And I'll tell you why, because I'm going to use this going forward. This is what Brian Harsin and Hugh Freeze have taken from us. This used to be such a rivalry, such a proud football program that we're rewriting the course of naval history to watch this team play. And look at us now on the plays. It's not worth even changing your Saturday plans for. And so this is what it used to be to the SEC when you had the oldest rivalry in the Southeast going back and forth. So, but that I could put myself so clearly in that point in time where like Auburn, Georgia was it. And I fully relate to that. Yeah.
Hugh Freeze era. Babe. Let's go to Home Goods. This is the time. Fourth quarter. You know what? We need a new sectional. We just got one like last year. What are you talking about? No. This is the time. Just trust me. That's the life that Auburn fans are living these days. Hopefully it gets better real soon.
If I have some pirates up there, we can't surface today. I might get a push notification of the Auburn score. We're just gonna stay submerged till Sunday, all right?
That's what I was thinking about. Like being submerged at different points of the day is it like more of a risk or something like that? Maybe it is. The idea of being submerged does not sound particularly fun. But thank you for your service. Very much appreciate it. All right, please email us. theogkickoff@gmail.com. If you have been to one of these It Just Meant More games that we're doing, we would love to hear from you. Would love to hear any stories that probably overlap. I'm sure there's some of those It Might Mean Too Much stories for the It Just Meant More games that we do here. We are doing this week the 2009 SEC Championship, Alabama, Florida, maybe the greatest passing of the torch game of the 21st century in college football. We're doing that. That is the plan. If you have not, leave us a 5-star review. Got a lot of great 5-star reviews early on for switching over from the previous show to our current the OG Kickoff. Really appreciate that. That meant a lot. Please, if you haven't, leave us one of those. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every single episode of the OG Kickoff. Follow us on Twitter @CJOguerra @GhostHard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.